We will now begin the strategic planning meeting for the city of Boynton Beach. Do we have a flag here? Would everyone please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance?
I have one, but it's outside. Maybe like it's in that corner.
Well, it's on the other side. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Trina, would you like to begin?
Yeah, there's no, you can say a whole lot of them to
No formality.
reintroduce Trina for the public, Trina, William, and Myra, with the Training Nations, our strategic planning consultants. And we are here today to give an update, 6-month calendar update on.
That's not on. That's not on.
Thank you. On our current strategic plan, so we're going to talk a little, we're going to let you know where we are as of the 6 months, and then toward the end of the year, probably as we shift into the new fiscal year, we'll be giving you a final update for the current plan. And we're going to talk a little bit today also about some of the ideas we have for next year's plan, but I think we'll just touch on that depending on time today, and then we'll have further discussion with the commission May, June-ish on finalizing our plan for next year.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, City staff, and the public. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So my name is Trina. I'm with Trainovations. Myra and I are working on the strategic plan in conjunction with both commissioners and city staff. So our goal this evening is to review what you have in front of you, which is the report that you received. What I'd like to do is just review first the things that we agreed on as I interviewed each of you. And that begins with a quick congratulations to you. You have done an amazing job of transitioning not only with a new group of people, but with a new strategic planning process. We moved from 150 plus projects that the staff was working so diligently on to complete to last year having 22 programs that were important to the city but a little bit higher level, and this year we are transitioning into 4 strategies. So a real strategy-based strategic plan, and that deserves a public kudos to you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
In the 6-month update, as I discussed with each of you, there were 7 initiatives that no one had any questions on. Just to review them very quickly, we have a real good understanding of, under strategic objective number 1, safe and livable neighborhoods, there were 4 objectives we were working on last year. They are in various stages of completion: restoring the village, the policing innovation program, model block development partnership, and sustainable quality communities. There were no questions on those 4. If you've thought of any, now's a good time. If you understand the status and the space in which these are in various different levels of completion, I'll move on to strategic objective number 2, town square redevelopment. There's 1 there. The initiative was solicit RFQ for redevelopment of town square. The 3rd strategic initiative was foster community pride. There was only 1 initiative there, develop unique identity with events. And then high performing organization, 1 initiative, employee on-site medical clinic. These 7 initiatives under these 4 objectives, there were no comments or questions or any update needed by any of you. Have you?
I got one. Employee on-site medical clinic. Has it opened?
Yes, sir. We opened early March. Early March. I've been there 2 times. It's awesome. We have a lot of employees going. I don't have exact numbers right now, but I think we've definitely received some very positive feedback.
Okay.
So we'll probably be doing There's still some construction work to be done in the lobby and out front, so we haven't done a nice grand opening yet. We're planning on that mid-May. So yeah, they have to finish that. We have some final work to get done still, but the clinic is operational.
Thank you.
Other questions on these? Okay, hearing none, I will move on. There were questions and comments and more information requested by one or more of the elected body. So we'll walk through them one at a time. The first one was Links Golf Course financial sustainability. Can we get an update on that?
Colin's not here yet. He's over making a presentation to the town of Hypoluxo on the water utility. So I wanted to make sure he was had some time to get that done, so he's going to come here late. But Ron, are you here? Yes. Yeah, you want to come up and talk about how we're doing with the greens? And
The sustainability of the golf courses, actually starting May 22nd of this year, is they're coming in and do the greens. So we're going to get all new greens on the championship course, and the sustainability, that's going to take us to the next level where we need to go to be competitive in the marketplace, to get more rounds, which you've actually already started. There's a couple of proposals that are going to be coming to you for repricing of the golf course to make it more affordable, more competitive, doing away with some plans that compare some, like in our parks and recreation, we can have a price range where we can structure inside there where we can move our prices to without our hands being tied to compete, which we've already started, and that's where we're going to be more competitive. More rounds, it's already showing. Of course, it's going to get better with the greens, and we're going to increase rounds in play.
Ron, you said May 22nd?
May 22nd, we start construction.
Okay. And how long do we expect that to last?
We will, the golf course is open. I'll send a notice to Eleanor and all. We are going to be on temporary greens starting actually on the 30th of the month, because they're going to work on, I just talked to the gentleman yesterday. They're coming in on the 22nd to start the back 9, tearing up all the greens. And the front 9, there's a procedure that we have to do before they work on the greens, but they can put on the greens until that time. But starting the 22nd of the month, we're going to be going to what we call temporary greens, and that would be, prices will be way reduced, like $15, $16 for somebody walking off the street. The question is, how long does it take? It depends on the weather, because so goes the weather. It takes 2 to 3 months to grow in. So as it grows in, for them to do the project is actually probably a month, and then it's just growing time. So they have to grow it in, and our maintenance team takes over and they nurture the greens, and we're not going to open up a day or two too soon. Our goal is definitely by September 1st. I mean, that helps, but that all depends on the weather.
Thank you.
Ron, can you elaborate a little bit why we are spending this kind of money to do the greens over, and what kind of new grass that you're putting in?
The greens are 9 years old. There's 2 golf courses that have the greens that we have, which is called Tip Dwarf with us and Lake Worth Muni. It's old school. We are getting up to standard. We are replacing it with Tip Eagle. We send samples out to Florida Research that does our soil impact. We looked at all different grasses that go in there. I mean, so we've had people come up to you, why don't you do past pollen like osprey, or you have to go by what your ground your levels are that for research which you can grow the best. Tip Eagle's going to work in our place. We've already checked other places that have it, and we're looking for just to give you an idea though, greens can go anywhere from 8 to 15 years, depending on how weather and nurturing and stuff like that. So it's basically a 10-year project. So it's not something you do every day. So if this works out fine, you can go 10 years, you can go 8 years, you can go 15 years. But that all depends on what goes on down the line and how much traffic. We're looking for more traffic on the course, and these greens will handle the traffic better. Sorry.
They're a little more disease resistant also, aren't they?
Yes, yes. Like the disease, what happened last year with all the rain, these will weather that condition much better. Yes. The greens we had before couldn't weather that. Not like that. And not only that, would also pick up more speed. We're looking to come up to the industry standard. We're going to be probably anywhere between, I'm going to say 10 to 11 on a scale, averaging 10 on the speed.
Great. Thank you.
In regards to financial sustainability, are we in the red or the right?
We're behind right now because we're going to lose this summer because we got we weren't know when we put the budget in last year, we didn't know what we're going to get the green money or money to do the greens or not. So of course we're going to lose because 3 months of summertime, you're going to lose a third of your money for 3 months due to people aren't going to be coming like they are.
Ron, currently, do you know if we're in the red or the black for this past season from January till today, April?
We're under.
Okay.
We're in the what? Up and down?
Yeah,
We're not making a budget yet.
Because we've lost playership and we're going to lose that in the greens.
Yes.
Yeah, 'cause right, I remember when you stood at commission meeting, you said if it doesn't go, you're going to quit, but I hope you don't.
But
Yeah,
you got to
thank you.
let me have my
Yeah.
green, check me out after next season.
Yeah, no, I'm serious. No, I'm just saying that was what you told us, but I want you to stick around. I'm just saying, I don't know why you even went that far at that meeting that night. but,
The greens, because golf course needed greens, I'm going to do anything I can to get the greens to sustain this golf ability. So if the greens don't, the greens are the engine of the golf course. So goes your greens, so goes that. If we don't make it with the greens, then hey, the business is November through April. If we don't make it between November and April, that's any golf business is seasonal.
Thank you.
And just quickly, as part of our approach with the long-term sustainability is marketing the course differently and more aggressively. We pulled the golf course operations. It's always operated as its own, as it is an enterprise. We've pulled that under the umbrella of our Recreation and Parks Department, and they are working closely together now to really take advantage of the skills and from the event planning side and so forth through recreation. So again, you heard last night, Tuesday or Saturday night, that we have our concert on the greens, a really nice event, the first time in years that we've had any type of event, free event for family, food and music and the whole thing, to really attract attention to the course and get people to get players out there. So we're also marketing out to the Western community where the course actually sits. It's outside of our corporate limit. So we're hoping that also will help us out.
Thank you.
Moving forward with our 6-month update, the next initiative was a CRA dog park, and we had many comments around that. There are some specific questions around the funding and what we're doing with it and so forth. Would anyone like to ask a specific question, or should we turn it over to the CRA for?
I'd like to make a comment. First of all, we have a dog park already here in the city of Boynton, which is going to be expanded. And my take is that for right now, we hold off on that dog park for the CRA until the right time. I'm in favor of that. I'm just saying, I don't see any point. We're rushing to move forward to put a dog park over on this side. I'm just saying we got one. Let's utilize what we have. I'm just one voice.
I could agree with Commissioner McCray. Does the board want an explanation, or can we move forward on the next item?
No, I have no problem letting it slide. Although I will note that in my year up here, it's become very apparent that lots of times people don't cross the east and west side. So over time, I think that it'll become more important once town square and development happens to eventually get on the west side, just so there's convenience for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Does anyone need clarification on the 6-month update?
No.
No.
The next one is MLK corridor redevelopment. Again, we had some questions on the status of this.
Well, really what's happening, let me jump in because what's happening there is that we have developers that's coming in who's really not, not at the point where they are at the plate where they can perform. And I'm just saying, I think for the MLK corridor, we're moving as fast as we can with what is being presented to us. Now, if you want to say anything, you can.
Any questions, specific questions for?
Just my question, the number 4, can the CRA do a commercial restaurant similar to the Little House on some of its property?
The answer is yes.
Okay.
If the board approves a project like that, we are eligible to do that.
But my take is, if you do something like that, okay, we already have problems with the little house down there, because I see y'all still building it, and it's been vacant, nobody's in there. We want something, if you do anything, we would like to have something viable that's benefiting that community. We don't want anything sitting there, then reconstruction and da-da. We like to be up and moving.
I think that was the last board's blunder.
Okay.
For the little house, I think we would do a better job.
I have a quick question to Mike. Mike, currently we have that under so-called contract, these tax credits there.
Yes, sir.
New Rock, I believe it is. I think he has the end of June, June 28th or something on to that idea to see if that goes through or not. And tentatively, he has 3 of those properties under contract. If it does go through to buy, have we done any research to see if we can pick up those options if his deal falls through to the CRA?
Those contracts provide for an assignment that he currently has with those owners. So it does provide for that if we are willing to pick those contracts up for the prices that he has for them.
And just off the top of the head, do you know what those prices, the total prices were for that? I think it was like a little over $1 million.
About $2.4 million.
$2 million for.
Yes, sir. And you've set aside $1.1 million at this point. The advantage under the tax credit program was that the New Rock was going to pay up to $2 million for properties, and anything less than $2 million we would get the balance of for our parcels. If he's over $2 million, then the CRA is at 0, so that he can use those funds for the other properties. I did receive an email from him today on timing, and you're correct. The contract that we currently have with him expires if he doesn't have funding by June 30th of this year. But they are currently in second position as a matter of the lottery draw. Next Tuesday, April 25th, staff, the Florida Housing Finance staff, will be doing their ranking. It'll be 2 o'clock on the 25th, and Robbie Block from New Rock will be there and call me as soon as they hear if there's been a change to the initial ranking. I'm sure that they will challenge, as all of those folks do. As you know, they did for the Ocean Breeze site. That gives them from April 25th or 6th until June 30th to try to find some advantage in, other than their ranking, would be to challenge it, unless they just decide not to do it again. But
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any,
No more questions?
No more questions.
no more questions? Okay, and moving along, there are 2 initiatives in transportation and mobility. Boynton Beach Boulevard improvements. There was a question about funding.
We have funding set aside?
Last week at the CRA board meeting, the CRA board discussed, after approving the design concepts presented by Kimley Horn, the CRA board elected to move forward with those designs, had some brief discussion about funding and perhaps putting aside funding over the course of some upcoming years to, I guess, kind of provide a little bit of a financial incentive or nest egg, if you will, a project fund to begin to accumulate construction dollars. But they did not make a formal decision at that point on whether to begin to start that or not. We are, as you know, entering into our upcoming budget preparation and planning for next fiscal year, so I imagine that will get more serious for the board at that time.
All right.
Michael, where do you see those potential funds coming from to help fund that Boynton Beach Boulevard construction?
Well, other than some grant funding from either the MPO or FDOT or some kind of Tiger grant, some kind of federal grant, the presumption would be that the city or CRA would absorb the majority of that cost. I think it's reasonable to think that we might be able to find some grant funding to do that project over time. As we move farther along in the design phase, those kinds of funding become available to cities or CRAs that are within the construction-ready phase of the project. But, you know, along with Del Rey's Federal Highway Corridor $11 million project, that was funded by the CRA, and I would imagine, unless we can take advantage of development that is about to occur in block sections, which would be a great advantage financially to us if we can accommodate some of those adjustments to the right-of-way line with the development happening, kind of cut down on our overall project stretch. I think we can save some money, but ideally, or ultimately, I think it's going to come down to the CRA or the city to fund some of those improvements after design.
So that's something we should be taking under consideration now to start banking for the future of that project?
Yes, sir, I think that's reasonable. And remember, a lot of the improvements that we discussed with Kimley Horn, if you could just kind of erase the lines that exist on the road today, we're not talking about other than undergrounding utilities and things like that happen from the sidewalk into the private property areas. These are really kind of surface level changes that might be, as we get along through design and get those approvals with FDOT, might be less expensive than perhaps a full-scale, regrinding of the road and undergrounding utilities and all the rest. So it could be done in a simpler way to get the effect of the smaller lane and the wider median and sidewalks without having to go into really, really big money. But we'll know that as they begin to start costing out the improvements that you select as part of their design.
Does our access to those potential grants go up if we have money stored away?
Yes, sir. Matching funds from the entity that is applying, or both entities, if we were to do a joint application, would be huge as far as scoring and impact, no question.
You have a list of those places where we can get grants. I'm just saying, if we say, let's do it now, BAP, you got the list already to go. You know where we can get.
I have a list of where we would be researching those grant availabilities. Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, we can just
we would begin to start that.
So we.
That's great. Yes, sir, we would. Absolutely.
Is it possible to also enlist the developers that are coming into the city to also help with certain parcels of Boynton Beach Boulevard as we build it?
Absolutely. You have some that are coming to you now, even on West Boynton Beach Boulevard, that are being discussed. And if those projects, for instance, aren't implementing all of the suggested design recommendations under the CRA plan, and if we don't support those as being kind of, this is what you have to do based on that because of these other impacting situations, we lose that opportunity. So I think it would take, as you know, the CRA board doesn't provide approvals of site plan, so it would take a city commission to enforce those recommendations and to be supportive of them where they're applicable to those new design and new development opportunities in order to get those 16 feet of pedestrian mobility and improvements on the sidewalk with trees and any on-street parking that can be accommodated at that time. We could work with Kimley Horn under our contract to help those developers, knowing exactly what you're designing and what you want to design, to sit down with them now and say, okay, instead of the 8-foot sidewalk you're going to do, we're going to need you to give us that additional 8 foot of pedestrian active zone and, you know, all of the things that are in the plan, which we're, as staff, trying to enforce, of course, with some resistance to developers, because obviously if it doesn't fit exactly, they would rather not do that. So it's really going to come down to you all deciding as a commission how important those elements are to each individual project and I guess, how firm you'll be on getting those. These are great opportunities, especially on Boynton Beach Boulevard. Other roads and other areas, maybe you can be more flexible, but if you want to try to incorporate those at the same time, it's a great opportunity to do so.
No further questions?
Thank you.
Moving on to mobility fees, there was a question around impact fees. Can we perhaps get a clarification on that?
Yeah, sit down, because we're going home at 8 o'clock now.
Okay, I'll stand up because I can see over you. There's two issues here. The issue of mobility fees arose because the city and a number of cities within the county were concerned that Palm Beach County is assessing roadway impact fees. Those roadway impact fees being assessed by the county are used for roadway widening purposes associated with the capacity needs of projects. As a project is built, it brings in new drivers, new passengers, new vehicles. What we found in a number of communities is those roadway impact fees are leaving communities and going to areas further removed from that road, within the road impact fee zone that the county has designed, but going farther and farther removed from the location where the fee was generated. As such, we've found that roughly $22 million of fees over the last 15 years have been collected in Boynton Beach, and only $3 or $3.5 million, plus or minus, I don't have the number off the top of my head, has been spent back within our community. So a number of communities are looking at establishing their own mobility fees. A mobility fee is something to supplant or to replace the roadway impact fee that can be used, as the name denotes, to move people, mobility. In some fashion, you move people, whether they be in an automobile, on a bicycle, or on their feet. So a mobility fee is used for the purpose for exactly that. We were working towards a mobility fee through the Palm Beach County MPO and working with County Highway Department staff to replace the county roadway impact fee with a variation of a mobility fee so that all communities in entire Palm Beach County could utilize or avail themselves to mobility fees so that the fees would remain in closer proximity to the project as it was created. Through that process, the county staff decided that they weren't real interested in moving forward. They weren't interested in changing the roadway impact fee. So the MPO, the full MPO board, and Mayor, chime in because you're part of the full MPO board, decided that it wanted to have a further committee look at the issue of mobility fees and roadway impact fees, and to also check on the legality with the Attorney General of how the roadway impact fees are collected and the change to the method for collection of those. That's the larger picture. That is still moving forward on a county level at a much slower pace than we envisioned. Boynton Beach, should it choose, can have its own mobility fee. But to have a mobility fee, it's very important to know that we have to have a mobility plan. And that mobility plan is a very defined plan of how we will utilize any fees created. So if we have a mobility fee, the derivation of it is founded upon exactly where you'll build sidewalks, exactly where you will do complete streets. You have a very defined plan where you're going to put pavement, where you would do asphalt, where you may have mass transit of sort, for example, a small trolley system. A very defined plan, and then there has to be a rational nexus to that development that's generating the fee, so that the development, the people that are paying that fee, have an understanding of why that fee is being paid and where those dollars are going. We can do our own. We have the choice of doing that now. To go our own, we'd have to spend a couple of $100,000 to have a mobility plan created that's defensible, so that that plan can create how much the fee should be and where we assess it and how we use the dollars. Yes?
Does the impact fee then go away? It just becomes a mobility fee? So it's not like a double fee?
That's correct.
Okay, so mobility fee goes away. I mean, the impact fee goes away and it becomes a mobility fee, and those dollars stay closer to where they were intended to be.
Yeah, and you have to keep in mind that one of the reasons we want to keep the dollars close, not only do we want the improvements, but you have to recognize that the people that are paying the fee are not the developers. The developers are paying the fee with money that's paid to them by the people that buy the property, right? So we have to be very careful. We don't want our fees too high as well, because that impacts our new residents are the ones that are paying that fee. So we need to be very careful that the fee collected matches what is a very defensible mobility plan.
So is this mobility fee like another tax, or we could call it like that, or what would we get it from the citizens?
We would be getting it from the people. If somebody moves into a new apartment complex, the people that are moving into that new apartment complex, the developer is going to be paying the fee, but he's going to pass that fee on in the form of rent.
Ouch.
So it's a very complex formula. On one hand, there's value to hoping, and I'm an eternal optimist that something good can come from it. that we can continue to work through the full MPO board with county staff and try to create a county-wide mobility fee. I'm hopeful that that can work. If it doesn't, then we certainly have the option of doing our own.
The money that we already paid in, I'm just saying, can we get our money, or have we lost it?
No, we haven't lost it. We're still working with the county on some intersection capacity improvements that we believe that we need, trying to pull some of those highway or the roadway impact fees back in our community. But keep in mind, the roadway impact fee that the county assesses is for asphalt and concrete. Any mobility fees that you assess can be for bike lanes, sidewalks, mass transit, over and above Palm Trap.
We just did, talking about Boynton Beach Boulevard, can that fee be used to help with Boynton Beach Boulevard expansion?
If you show a need for the fee, if you can show that X development is going to generate Y pedestrians, we have a need for a wider sidewalk, that we have a need for bike lanes. If we can prove the need, then the fee is justified. The county can justify their fees fairly easily. Running a capacity analysis in an intersection is engineering 101. But trying to define how many pedestrians and cyclists will be generated from a development, how they'll move from development to development, is a bit more difficult. And you can't really talk too much about moving them between developments at a farther distance, because now you're into the issue of roadway fees. It's pretty complex.
It is.
I would like to give it another few months to see how far we move forward with the MPO. And very honestly, Mayor, if you'd like to jump in, you've been just as involved with this as I am, and on a much higher political level than the nerd engineers.
For the higher political level in the MPO is that the discussion was to go to the Attorney General to figure out what they can else use the impact fees, because expanding roads is not necessarily what the Palm Beach County wants, because in order to expand some roads you have to use eminent domain to take away from businesses and residences to expand those roads. The other aspect why I would want to move forward with the mobility fees and not wait is that we have Ocean One, Riverwalk, and our Town Square project. I don't know if I believe that those impact fees are $1 million plus for each of those projects.
I don't know the number off, but it's
I
costly.
don't know if that's a number that we can have, but the reason why we would move faster than the county is that we would want those dollars to stay within the city, and so that we can also use it for can we have the coastal tri-rail station part of our mobility fee study? Can we have a new trolley system? The Blueways with Lake Ida and the transfer station. We'll get it from the canal system to the Intracoastal. Is that all included in our mobility fees?
Mobility fees, movement of people, and so any way that you decide to move them, but the mobility fees based upon a plan that is constructible, not a pie-in-the-sky plan. It has to be something that you've researched, you've evaluated, and if the money is in the bank, you will build it.
So everything I said, is that pie in the sky, or?
Not really. It's all what is incorporated into a plan. But a plan can't be us sitting around a table and say, we would like to have X on the mobility plan, let's put it in. That needs to be evaluated for constructability, for right-of-way or property acquisition, the cost to acquire, placed into the plan. Then the costs of those improvements then need to be the derivation of what fee per unit that you charge, based upon your future land use map, the way that you see your community growing.
Okay.
Jeff, how long would it take to develop? We talked about needing to bring a firm in to do that, and it would take quite some time. How long?
I think it'd be a 12-month process to develop a good mobility plan that is rational and that is defensible to the developers, and something that we want, something that we believe has value to the community or added value.
Okay.
Jeff, does the fact that the recently approved 2016 CRA redevelopment plan with very specific designations for roads and upcoming improvements that we would like to see in the CRA district, in the TOD area, and all these things where we're describing not necessarily expansion of roads, but building complete streets and bicycle lanes and all the things that you've talked about, does that add extra, I guess, power to the plan? I mean,
It gives you a good starting point. It's one thing to say that we, will support and promulgate the complete streets concept. It's another thing being able to build it. And a mobility plan is going to be very specific as to where you're going to put bike lanes, where the users on those bike lanes will be or originate, and where their destination will be. It has to be a much more defined process.
Are you
Got a head
familiar with
start.
what West Palm's doing now? I mean, they're moving forward with their own plan. Do you know?
They're creating their own mobility plan, and they're working with a consultant to create the mobility plan. And it's a multi-$100,000 project to do that work. But you need that base foundation. You need a very good foundation so that when you start assessing fees, you have a very reasonable basis for assessing those fees.
So if I heard you correctly, you're saying that it might cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars to get this study?
More than that.
I think it would be several $100,000 for the study that we would have to pay up front. You're-
To get a consultant to do a study for us to create a plan?
To do the
Yes.
plan.
Yeah.
I guess, can we get the data of the impact fees the city has collected and like expected impact fees for the new projects of Ocean One and 500 Ocean?
Yeah, we can do that.
And can we also get a number on an estimate of what it would cost to get a consultant to do a mobility plan?
Do an RFQ.
Or at least know how much West Palm spent? I just want to know a number.
How much West Palm spent? That's
Yeah, it would be a refinement of my $200,000 guess, so we'll see how much better we can get than that. I'm just basing that upon other plans that I've heard other communities and what they've paid for. I think it might be wise, it's up to you. You may want to give it a couple of months to see where the MPO goes with this.
What is your hope that waiting a couple months will yield?
My hope is that the impact fee zones will be changed at the county so that the zones are smaller. There was initial discussion when we were dealing with it in MPO that there may be some zones, such as Boynton Beach, east of the 95, that would be in a zone where impact fees would not be collected at all, roadway impact fees, giving local municipalities the ability to collect fees. Now, you got to also keep in mind that the collection of fees, whether you collect them or not, can be a marketing tool where you may want to affect the price of housing, right? If you don't collect fees, you've reduced the price of these developments, and you've made it more valuable to build in Boynton Beach. See, everything's a balance.
We could choose to waive fees.
correct, similar to like our art fee.
Correct.
Jeff, just to clarify, the fees that we're talking about are only the road impact fees, correct? Not
The county-
public building or parks fees or any of that?
That's correct. Only the road impact fees. And even the discussion we had at the MPO level was, geez, isn't the county interested, other than road impact fees, doing mobility fees, because people in unincorporated Palm Beach County are moving in different ways themselves. They have many cyclists, many pedestrians. So
Right.
we believe even the county should be looking at it.
Okay, since we got 2 months to wait, can we get the information? That's what I.
Yep.
That's what we need.
Okay. And I guess, can we also, because look at all the other fees that we have as well for building, the parks, the art.
Yeah, right. So the county also assesses, again, public buildings fees, parks fees, and then we have also the city's park fees and water and sewer impact fees. So these are all collected at time of issuance of permits or water and sewer approvals. So we collect the Palm Beach County impact fees through our building division. They're assessed on the permits, and we collect them at time of permit issuance. So.
Okay, so they give them the bill, when they pay the bill, they get the permit?
Correct. So we collect the fees, and then we transmit those fees to the county, and we retain a percentage for administrating that collection process for them. So, but we collect, like on, for instance, 500 Ocean, I believe that check was $2 million, something around that number. I think it was like $1.5 million, so about 800,000 of that was road impact fees. The other part was public building, and the parks fees made up the remainder of that.
Okay, I guess, so it's based upon a ratio?
It's based on the number of units and number of beds. It's a whole calculation that you go through.
Okay, so yeah, I guess I'd like to see the calculations.
Sure.
I can get you that information.
Hey, Jeff.
It's a complex matter. It really is.
Thank you for the update. We have 3 more initiatives in the 6-month update. And again, this is a 6-month update. If we move to secure funding and engage consultant to review alternatives for unfunded pension obligations, there was a question around someone that was hired.
We did that last night?
Yes, we just awarded it last night, so we have a consultant on board. And the contract, am I on? The contract is for 1 year. We anticipate within the year being able to come back with recommendations for commission discussion.
Other questions? Expansion of ETR and a certificate of use programs. Can we get a update?
Sure. So we kicked off this process in, I believe it was in January. We started some preliminary meetings with staff to evaluate what's the best alternatives, how we're going to expand the certificate of use program. So right now we're still looking at evaluating that. Hope to have some information back to you by the time we look at budget, because there's some impacts to the budget on personnel. Costs that would need to be budgeted for if we expand it, because there's annual inspections that go with that. And on top of that, we've also looked at how we streamlining our processes. We're already in the process of implementing how we print our bills and the renewal notices. Those are utilities had outsourced their printing and customer service collections, I believe it was last fiscal year or this fiscal year. But so we're going to piggyback off what they're doing. Since they're printers, we used to use their printer to print our bills. So now we're going to piggyback off with their vendor, and they're going to print our bills. And we're also looking at doing collections through their same process, which is a very efficient way. I think we looked at collection and bill printing as not being a core function of what the business tax division or the development department does. So that would help streamline our processes. We're also looking at leveraging, looking at alternative measures to help with the annual inspections. One of the things we're looking at was evaluating whether fire inspectors or fire marshals could, supplement some of the work that we're doing in the business tax division. So we're just now in that process. Mark Woods has only been here a month and a half. So trying to let him get up to speed a little bit, and we've been meeting with Mark. We had a meeting this week to discuss that, and we've met in the past with Chief Joseph, also with David and Pierre. So we're in the process of evaluations right now, and we hope to have something around budget time with a better plan to formulate a work plan to bring back to you for evaluation.
Other questions? Okay, and finally, the development of framework and funding mechanism for the cost of roads, sidewalks, parks, and lands. And there was a question around CIP projects.
Okay, since you're going CIP projects, I'm going to go with parks already. Sarah Sims. Hello?
Yeah?
What was the question?
The question is,
are we going to do Sarah Sims this coming year?
Can I make a question, an answer into a question?
However you want to do it, but I need a...
I kind of, as I've said it the last 2 years at the capital planning meetings, I need guidance from the community as to what to do. I've got 2 options. We can rebuild and maintain the facilities that are there in place, or we can move forward with the CRA master plan to build a new park.
Okay, let me explain why I'm
So
so
help me
adamant
to-
about this. First of all, District 2, we've said that we've been putting this on hold, and every time we get ready to do something, something came up, and then said about, look at the process of putting homes and stuff like that. The citizens are telling me, I'm going to tell staff that they're tired of waiting. They said they want a park. Give us a park. Let us be responsible for keeping that park. I'm just saying if it gets torn up, at least we got something from the city. We're saying that we are tired of being put on the waiting list for Sarah Sims.
And from a staff maintenance perspective, it's getting very difficult to maintain the existing facilities.
So maybe if we do put a nice facility there, then it will probably won't be so cost effective. I'm just saying this is something that We are pushing for this time. I'm just saying, we did the CRA master plan. We got the plan. We don't have to do it again. We could put something in place. This is what they're saying now.
Jeff, in District 4, some of my constituents are complaining about the walkway that goes around the Knollwood Park over on Lawrence. The asphalt there, it's buckling, cracked in many places, causing some hazards. Would that be under consideration?
That would be in our routine capital plan for replacement about 15 years out, and it would be in our staff in-house maintenance plan to repair any trip hazards.
So how do we expedite it like a Sarah Sims type of thing?
The Sarah Sims, expedite the Sarah Sims Park. It needs to be a policy directive from the elected officials or the CRA board to move forward with constructing a new park. And I'm getting a little out of my pay grade.
Could that same process be done for Knollwood Park in District 4?
It's a matter of the money we have in the capital budget and setting priorities. And, each year with the commission, when we take a look at the capital improvement plan, as we did last year, have a good little conversation about what we need and what we identify versus what we can pay for. It's always a challenge because there's a big gap. There we go. Okay. So Sarah Sims, we have, I'm not going to come up with numbers, but I know we have regular maintenance and replacement and repair to the restrooms in the upcoming for the next fiscal year, to do restrooms, to do the water fountain. There's several line items that are maintenance related that are in the city's capital plan. And those at this point, as we move forward and the commission adopts the budget, that's in the plan. Yes, we will get those done. The greater question that Jeff and we struggle with is the master plan that sits out there that the CRA did several years ago. And to actually construct the master plan, I think the estimates at the time were a couple $1 million to build it. So that's the issue there is identifying the funding if we go down that route. The city, the funding that's in the city's budget right now can be used to augment that, Commissioner, and maybe take what we have to, if we decide to do it sooner. I'm going to be looking back at Mike and his budget to build that park. Surtax money should not be used to build that park. Our capital improvement plan, frankly, I do not believe that we'll be able to handle a $2 million nut there to do that. So, and I think all along the initial thoughts were, as the CRA moved forward with the master plan, was that they were going to build the park. So that's a funding discussion that you guys will have with the CRA budget. But we do have, and we keep deferring the past few years, and that's your frustration and ours too. We don't want to sink $150,000 into building new restrooms when, if the master plan comes through and we build the park in a couple years, we've just spent a lot of money that's going to get torn down because that doesn't, where the bathrooms say sit today, aren't where they're going to go with the newly planned and newly laid out park. So we need to make a decision. You're absolutely right. It's either we're going to commit to getting that park rebuilt, then we'll take what we have in our capital, add it to the fund of the CRA and get the thing done. If not, we will go and spend $400,000, I think, is probably roughly what's in next year's budget to get the bathrooms completely rehabbed. They would be torn down. They would be.
It was bathrooms, it was lighting, parking.
Renovated.
We contemplated a fence at some point.
Right.
Right.
So that's the.
I understand what you're saying, but the CRA master plan for Sarah Sims Park, somebody gave me a date when this was done. I'm just saying it wasn't, it's been
years.
There,
yeah.
some years. I'm just saying.
I would say 2 years ago.
Yeah, two and a half years
okay,
ago.
so we got the plans, and I'm just saying the citizens are tired of waiting. We had a pavilion that got burned down. We got insurance money from that. It wasn't replaced, and this is why we're getting frustrated. I'm just saying, we're not seeing anything going back in there. The reason that they have the bikes and things running through there is because it seems like they call it a hole in the wall. And I'm tired of hearing about, our park is the hole in the wall. When I walk out here, look at Intracoastal, I go over on Congress Avenue, we see beautiful parks. I'm just saying. And the citizens, they're saying, when are you all going to give us something over that we can be proud of? You give us something that we're proud of, we'll take care of it.
People need to not destroy things.
No,
They didn't destroy it, but I'm just saying, human is human.
Well, District 4 in my district, the people are looking for some help up there in our park. I haven't heard, how much money do we have in our capital improvement project for Knollwood Park? That's what I'm asking. Is there any money set aside for that? I hear Sarah Sims. I represent District 4.
And those are all discussions, and I don't have it committed to memory, but we have 1 million deferred, maintenance items that are in our capital, so we'd have to go back and look, and I can let you know if there's anything in next year's plan or when that's programmed. But that's what we will be talking about, and we'll be having, that discussion again during the budget workshops. What are the priorities? We only have so much money, we have a lot more need. Surtax is going to help us substantially on getting all that, a lot of the deferred stuff caught up. It's
Jeff,
not
how many parks do we have?
26.
26, 27, maybe 28, and they're all really in need of some kind of maintenance or upkeep, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
And just like Commissioner Costello said about Norwood Park, I was on the commission many years ago, and they was talking about putting a park over there, and as long as they have been talking about a park in Norwood, it could have been done. I'm just saying, this is, as elected officials, we become frustrated because citizens are looking for us to deliver, and we cannot deliver because when we get there, people are saying, well, we don't have the funding, and we're collecting taxes, and we'll discuss this further, but I'm just saying, when the citizens are in the audience, but we do need to be, saying that let's give something back. I'm just saying, you can't do it all, do a part of it. I'm just saying, the old Sarah Sims Cemetery, that looks like, I don't want to use the word, but I would bury a dog out there.
And that gets addressed in the master plan as well, the expansion of the cemetery. And we've also, as we've had some very brief discussions, and now probably isn't the time, but, to look at doing some more, some workforce housing on the western end on a piece of it and redoing the master plan to bring all the features closer up to Seacrest, which I think will probably impact the price and probably bring it down a little bit. I still think it's at least $1 million, $1.5 million project. And we're going to have something to bring forward to you very soon on that. If the commission wanted to move forward and get the master plan adjusted and then try to get it funded and get it, see if we can do it next year. But understanding your frustration, we are feeling it and living it because we get the complaints every day as well. A lot of need, not enough money, but we're getting there. With the surtax money, it really is going to be a big help, and I think we'll be able to have a better discussion this year's budget. We're going to have a little more resource to be able to put toward
the
priorities.
surtax money is applicable necessarily to parks?
It's not, as far as the surtax money, it's meant for deferred maintenance. It's not to build a new city hall. It's not to go, I know the county is doing something with, and Jeff, I may need your help on what they're doing with some, I think they are building one new park out of that surtax money. I don't know how, but out west, out in the Canyon Lakes or something. I don't know. But what, that surtax money, so all of the deferred maintenance we have, roofs and playground equipment and all the roads and sidewalks, if we can take that $3 million, $4 million we're going to get a year and be able to have the money for that, that's going to free up some pressure in our capital plan to possibly allow us to take a look at some of these other projects. So, we have gotten some help. The surtax will be a help. It's not the answer to everything. No, not yet.
To most people, the surtax money should be boring because the surtax is not for new initiatives.
Right.
It's to maintain existing infrastructure.
Well, if I'm hearing you correctly, then wouldn't that make sense to then improve Sarah Sims or to improve Knollwood? You're not making a new park, you're improving. Wouldn't that be deferred maintenance?
Sims master plan, though, is for basically a new park.
I think, and that's where you get into the difference of building a new master plan. It's a new park. We have $300,000 or $400,000 in the budget for next year to do the bathrooms, some parking, some lighting. That is deferred maintenance, and that's where surtax dollars can go to that. And that's where, as far as the actually building a whole new park is not what the intent of the surtax was, and we have to be very careful with that. That's not to say we can't take the money that's in our capital next year and say, hey, CRA, we've got $400,000 on our side. Once with a redone master plan and that brings the budget to $1.3 million, we're a lot closer to getting it done than we were at $2 million.
Okay.
So
my question is that we did the consolidated CRA plan for the Heart of Boynton, which is not compliant with the current Sarah Sims master plan. Is that correct?
that process, yes, we would have to amend the master plan, and that's a public process, and that's where we're just now getting some
So
preliminary
is that
design.
really the first step?
Oh, I think you need community input right away.
So, okay, so let's start with the first step with regarding, there you go.
Chair.
The Sarah Sims, in the sense that we have a consolidated CRA plan that does not match up with the master plan for the Sarah Sims. Can we do that sometime over the summer to?
We have to change the public use portion of the park. Is that what we have
It's
to change
just
in
the
the plan?
addition of the housing that was discussed.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, I think
Ready
that-
to sit down.
So, okay, can we have that planned, I guess, in our future agenda items for the CRA and the city to get that taken a look at, so we have, something on the books that says we're looking at it?
Yes, we have some concepts laid out to add some housing on that west side of Sarah Sims, but the consolidated CRA plan doesn't conflict with the original Sarah Sims master plan. It just, after the plan, have added the concept of housing.
Right, so we would have to
So
go
it-
amend that.
Right.
Yeah,
You
just like
either
we will.
go with the plan as is without housing, or you try to introduce some housing on that west end, and if it's supported,
Well,
you just subtract that from the plan.
And that's a public process to
Yes,
amend
sir.
it?
We can
Yeah.
start that in
Yeah.
the summer.
Okay.
And that's where, Commissioner, we get the feedback from the community. And so what
At
I've,
least the community know that, we're not,
Right.
we're trying to do something. I'm just saying, because right now they feel like there's nothing being done.
well, and this is a good discussion we're having now, because we have, over the past few months, we've asked an architect to start giving us some overlay renderings of what the new master plan would look like without designing it, because that's more expensive, but it is to say, hey, give me an overlay of how many, if we had to do we do a replat for some new homes, how many homes can we fit? Our vision is, I think you're going to get 12 to 14 maybe, I don't know, and then
Yes,
they
ma'am.
all look over the park. Then you have wide park open space, and as we come closer to Seacrest, that's where you have the tennis courts and all the other facilities that are, one, visible and attractive. So that's what I'm probably going to be ready to bring when we're ready. And
Yes.
They're pretty much
Yeah.
ready now, from what I understand. So I'm ready to start having that discussion I wanted to talk to Commissioner McCrae, and each of you, we'll just sit down and I'll show them to you originally, and then I've asked Andrew, what I'm waiting for still too is our schedule of how we would do the public charrettes and get into the community. So it would be, I want to try to get some decision from the commission, so going into the new budget, we know exactly where we're headed.
Can
And
we
we're going to do the
use-
master plan and what we think it'll cost.
Can we use the crab board as public charrettes?
I think we need to do community meetings. Sure, you could throw it to the crab
right.
board too, but yeah, I think
At
we need to go
Carolyn
do some
Sims.
Carolyn Sims. Yeah.
would.
Okay, that
And
makes
you can do it
sense.
in phases. You can do
Yeah.
this improvement in phases,
Yeah.
because the east end is still, there's some private ownership of property. The majority of
The
ownership of
domain,
the,
yeah.
of the city land is from west and the northeast portion. So you could
So we
move
could start
forward
west.
with
So we'll have the
Meetings.
discussion over the
between
summer,
matching funds.
Wonderful.
and we'll know going in for the new year.
So one more statement, and I've said it a bunch of times, and I'm probably going to repeat it more today, and I'm going to repeat it more in the coming months. Given, all the different things moving around in the CRA, I would just say again that financial decisions, even ones that seem light, whether it's $50 or $100 or $200,000 here and there, need to be made with serious consideration, because something like Sarah Sims will never happen if we spend $400 or $600 or $800,000 chunks here and there. So just, if we want big projects to happen, we need big money. So, pay attention to the dollars on each vote that we take to try to make sure we have those funds.
Vice Mayor, I understand what you're saying, but my whole take is, we're going to go ahead, but my whole take is that we have been putting money out there, and I'm just saying now we're at the table trying to get money back, and I understand what you're saying, but, I think it's not really being fair to District 2, saying now you all are at the table and now we're going to turn our backs on you all. I'm just saying we will be paying attention to the money, but after all, we paid our dues like for over 20 years, and we haven't really seen anything that came in except a few homes and with the tearing down of things. And I'm just saying we will be paying attention.
Absolutely.
But I'm just saying we will pay attention. But don't take us off the burner. If we're on there, let us stay on there.
And I
Promise
want
to
to
be
interject
honest.
real quick,
That's
is that,
my opinion.
with having the homes in Sarah Sims, is that we are reducing the cost for Sarah Sims and
Right.
having increased tax revenue and maybe increased value for the land. So I think it's not always just a loser to spend money. We can, sometimes use the land that we have to create an asset for the community to build upon.
I'm through.
Good. All right, moving on.
And that concludes all the questions and comments that we received from the 6-month update. Other things that we talked about in our interviews together were the consented statement of conduct and values for the commission that we did last year. and all of you have re-agreed. So this is a great segue into how do we have those dialogues, how do we do our homework, maintain the highest standards of ethics. Again, I want to congratulate you. New group of people did a great job. As I talk to each of you, you've agreed to reconsent on these. Any questions, comments, edits, suggestions? Yes?
I changed my mind.
No.
What about the older commission? What about the older
Can you say it
commissioners?
louder?
Did they do a good job too?
I'm sorry?
The older commissioners, did we do a good job too? Just the new ones?
Speak for yourself, okay?
Yes,
I'm
absolutely.
going with the newbies now, okay? I just got reelected. I'm going with the newbies. Okay, Jeff.
I meant the group together.
Yeah, we're good. Uh-oh, you blocked. There you go.
Okay, so that is a reconsented statement of conducts and values. We will implement those for all the commission meetings and workings and dialogues again for this year. So that moves us to the strategic plan hierarchy. And again, as Myra and I interviewed each of you, we have a consensus that the vision will stand as it reads to be a welcoming and progressive coastal community that celebrates culture, innovation, and business development. The reason there's a star around that is because as we take a look at this hierarchy, and there are posters for both the public and then here for you to see, the vision provides us with a North Star. It provides us with direction. It provides us with places to understand that the decisions we make should and always be aligned with that North Star. The mission, the City of Boynton Beach is a vibrant and sustainable community that provides exceptional services, provides us with a reason to exist. And that's what the mission does. It provides us with a reason to exist. I had no comments, suggestions, edits. No one wanted to change it. The staff also agreed on it and liked it. Any comments now? Okay. So the vision and the mission provide the top of the hierarchy. The strategic results or the objectives are the pillars of the house. So if we use our house model, those are the pillars of the house. Again, we had a few comments around that, but no specific changes on that. So all commissioners have agreed to those pillars as they stand. There will be some questions in terms of alignment as your budget process is underway, your CIP workshops are underway. You'll see that those align. Here is the next item up for discussion, and we've all agreed on this, and this is the big shift for the city this year. The big shift is that we are not looking at individual projects. We do not have to prioritize them. Those priorities will be decided in your budget workshops. So all of the strategic initiatives that we'll be working with this year are four of them. And they are building wealth in the community, redevelop downtown, Boynton Beach branding, and transportation and mobility initiative.
Let me ask a question, because somebody explained to me this branding thing, because we had a branding thing, because they had a song out about catch a wave, catch a fish. What was that? Good afternoon.
Prior to when I came to go through a branding, it was in 2011, I believe.
Is that on?
Is it on?
No, it is.
Prior to when I came, you did go through a rebranding, and it was in, I believe, 2011, executed at the beginning of 2012. It is not unusual for communities, for businesses to go through rebranding. If we look at Apple or we look at Starbucks, they've gone through many, many rebrandings. I think now with what we're trying to achieve through our strategic planning, it's very important for us to relook at that branding, because branding should include your mission and your vision, which we've undergone a change since that period of time. I'm sorry, my mouth is dry. It also includes your strategies. And since we're very particular about our 4 strategies this year, I think this is a time to relook at our branding. In order to do that, what we must do is get the community involved in that. And we must do a survey that's encompassing. Since 2011, our demographics have changed, our audiences have changed. We need to redo that.
Right, I'm in favor of rebranding, I understand, but I just want to know what happened to that catch a wave, catch a fish, because I didn't catch any of it, so it didn't bother me.
I think the best way to look at this is that branding is not a logo. It's
Okay.
not a tagline. Branding is how we daily service our customers and our customer groups. It's how we answer the phone. It's how the mat looks when you walk in the door. People do confuse that a look and visuals are branding. It is a component of branding, but it is not branding.
Okay.
Commissioner, may I add that what we're doing now as we look at economic development and making that a priority for the city, and as we talk about meeting with our regional partners, whether they're county, other cities and municipalities around us, we look at branding as determining and creating a place or sense of destination for Boynton Beach, because we want to be able to brand ourselves. We want to be able to say this is a place we want people to come and live. So branding is more than just a logo. We see it as an overall strategy for growing the economic viability of Boynton Beach.
Okay, I'm with it, but I just wonder what happened to the song. I'm good.
Yeah. So branding is kind of your pull tactic. It's kind of pulling people in.
Yeah.
Your marketing is always pushing the tactic out. So
Does this mean the catchboynton.com website goes away?
we didn't have a catchboynton.com website.
Isn't that our CRA website?
It is our CRA website. It's very important to involve the CRA and Chamber in the rebranding. I love that website, but we probably would have our separate website. And we have purchased several domain names this year that we'll bring back to you for consideration.
Speaking of websites, when is our new website?
I knew you would ask that, Mayor.
Yeah.
We are looking at a target date of January 1 to have it executed for the public.
Okay, thank you.
We're in the development stage right now.
We still the gateway to the Gulf Stream?
This will always be considered in the rebranding. I think we're looking more, when I listen to the commission, I think we're looking more at what our communities are. Are we just a fishing destination? Are we just breeze into Boynton, which you could breeze into any city, basically? So I think we look back at what our communities are and what our North Star is, and we go from...
Are we still a fishing community?
We are a fishing community. Okay. We absolutely are. That's one of our assets.
But that's not all we are.
That's not all we are. We're very diverse.
I'm good.
Okay. So this is the house model. There's nothing on here that's really different. It just shows the strategic results, or the pillars, and what they are. Our strategic initiatives, for which this year there are 4, will help drive the action plans and support the results. So that's what this is about. The action plans ensure that those strategic initiatives are accomplished, and those action plans will lead to departmental operations, and we are looking this year to help departments, bless you, this year we are looking for departments to align their operations in a more holistic fashion rather than siloed and in and of themselves. And you'll start to see that as we move into the budget and the CIP workshops. Questions or comments on this?
I'm going to make a comment. Departmental operations, I'm just saying this is for the city manager. Is the departments buying into this?
Oh, absolutely.
I just want to make sure. Okay. I'm good.
Well, when we talk about the strategic plan, it obviously lays out our roadmap and our vision for our future that we see, and you do as the commission, as the policy setters and the drivers for the community. It's a tool for you to measure my performance, and it's a tool for me to measure staff's performance on all the things that we're doing to meet those initiatives, to meet that goal, to achieve our North Star. We're all on the same page, but we each have a piece of that to do. And it really just goes all the way down. That's what the process is, a beautiful process, because everything we do should be aligned and related to those 6 pillars and our 4 initiatives. Otherwise, we shouldn't be doing it. So it helps us better define and better lay out expectations and specific to-do lists of how we do that. So it's a great tool for you to observe my performance, and it goes down also with me with staff. So that's what I get excited about.
No problem.
And it helps departments work together towards the same results or opportunities.
In that spirit of working together, we're still also working on succession plans within the district, within the departments?
Every day, all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, do we have one big plan, a book that I can show you? No, but every department, we've literally gone through just about every single department in the city and developing the career paths and the succession planning. It's something you do constantly because things change, positions change, responsibilities change, so it's a fluid thing, but yes, we absolutely do.
For example, I just met our new deputy clerk.
Yes, yeah. Queen Esther. Yep.
Let me ask another question. I'm just saying, how do you all evaluate or encourage employees to take advantage of college courses and stuff like that to better themselves and to not just get into a place and just say, I'm just going to be happy here for 20 years?
One thing we do, and we see it, I'm very pleasingly see it happen frequently in our organization, is when there are opportunities that open up and positions open up that we encourage and we advertise internally first, and we try to allow for upward mobility and movement within the organization so you don't get stifled. We encourage people. Well, I'm going to try this year. Again, it's the needs versus the funding, is to get some tuition reimbursement back in the budget. I've asked Julie to put that in there, and hopefully it makes it through, and we can keep some money in there to be able to encourage our general employee population. I think our bargaining units, police and fire, have training dollars built into their budgets as a requirement of their collective bargaining agreement. So those programs are in place. Okay. And many of them, it's amazing as I get talking to folks, how many employees that we have that are all seeking their master's degrees now. I've talked to police officers that one told me he wants to be a city manager one day. Things like that. So
that's the one you ought to shoot. I'm just kidding.
No, I just want to say, we need to talk about that. No, so it's
he has such a good role model.
Right. So you sure you want to do it? No.
Thank you.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about the 4 proposed strategic initiatives. These will be a topic for discussion. The Commission has done such a good job this year in working with staff. We don't believe, depending on how the next month or so goes, we don't believe we will need another workshop. We do believe that we could probably put our piece on as a regular agenda item, and we will be able to consent and complete the strategic plan for fiscal year 18. So kudos to you. Good job.
Have we paid you for this? Because I'm just saying, I'm just checking.
And finally, there were a list of comments that you made and things that you wanted us to bring up to staff. They are not in that report because it was not appropriate for the 6-month update. So I have that. It will be in your report, and staff is privy.
When we bring the new strategic plan items to the commission, probably I'm thinking summer, June-ish at the latest, that we'll have a response to each of those comments and questions that were there, because it's, as we reviewed them, they fall under those 4 things beautifully. So we'll report that back summertime.
Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. And that is the end of our presentation. And again, kudos to you. You've done a fantastic job moving from project-based to strategy. Thank you.
Thank you.
be a much less painful process and
first one was,
efficient and to the point.
I miss missing the charts one, too.
Okay.
What do you miss?
Short arts running back and forth.
Stickers on.
Yeah.
That was kind of fun.
Yes.
In retrospect, it was fun.
For that this year. Okay?
Yeah, well, that's up to Mayor if you want to take a few minute break, and then I know we have our consultant here for the Metro study. Is that your call?
No, I don't think so.
Keep going. All right, then I need you to do the other. No, we'll just go right into the.
Oh, you guys want to?
We may need a 5-minute break.
We're going to let them set up, so we're going to take a 5-minute break.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commission. I have David Cobb here. He's our consultant. He's Regional Vice President of Metro Study, South Florida. We hired them to do our update of our housing needs assessment, and he's here to do a presentation and do any questions and answers that you have.
What is his name again?
David Cobb.
Cobb, C-O?
C-O-B-B.
Cobb, thank you.
Okay, David?
Thank you. I just got a promotion to vice president that I didn't know I had, so it's pretty good. So just briefly, the reason I'm here before you is we had done a housing assessment study for the city of Delray Beach back in July of last year, and they had the same housing affordability issues that you face. Your staff got a copy of that and liked it, so they commissioned us to do a similar study for your city. It's my understanding that the study hasn't been made public yet, so for the benefit of those that are here, I want to just briefly go over what the study comprises, and then we'll get into the executive summary portion, which is the key findings of the study, and then our recommendations, which is just a solution, not the solution, to this whole issue of housing affordability. So keep in mind that our recommendations are only a portion of what you guys need to examine. We've kind of broken it out by looking at the demographic information for the county as a whole, and then comparing that to the city. So the section of Palm Beach there gives you the whole county. Then we get into the city demographic information, which is also broken down further by the 3 main zip codes. Keep in mind that 33436 includes some unincorporated area outside of the city limits, and 33435 includes some areas that you see across the water. So to get it down to just the city level, we provided you with a census block breakdown. Each one of these census blocks is a handful of city blocks, very granular in nature, and we've sorted that in various ways demographically by income rates, age, and so forth that you can see in those pages. The housing overview then is also a comparison between the county and the city, and this gives you all of your housing stock information, existing housing as well as new. Then we isolate the new home activity, which at this point there isn't a whole lot of. That's in the new home summary data, and it's broken out by single-family detached, single-family attached, which are townhomes and duplexes, and condominiums. We then finish the study up with an analysis of the rental situation within the city, and that is the entire body of work here that you guys have been provided with. So I'm going to skip right into the executive summary and talk about some of the key findings, and not read this word for word, but just hit the main points here. You know, the first thing that you notice is that there isn't a whole lot of inventory. There was very few housing starts that occurred. There's a low supply of vacant developed lots. Now, when we talk about a vacant developed lot in Metro Studies terminology, we're looking really at these master plan type communities of at least 10 units or more. You do have an abundance of scattered lots, which you can see here, that have been being built on by Habitat and others. But we're talking about the typical or traditional master plan community, which can be at least 10 units or could be several hundred. When we look at the shift in the supply going forward, you'll see that with the Cortina project considering going to rental, it leaves you with only about 100 of these types of lots available within the city, and most of the rest of that, about 1,500, are rental units. So if you skip down to the fourth bullet there, we see that you're going to have about 1,800 new households that are expected to be formed within the city. Your population is expected to grow by 7.2%. That's in line with the state of Florida, and that's double what it is for the United States as a whole. So this is still a fast-growing area, even within the city limits.
Mr. Cox?
Yes.
May I interrupt if you don't mind? I did have a question about the third bullet. I just needed to understand the difference between average household income and median income.
Right.
Average is the total number divided by the people. Median is the middle number.
Yeah, the median is the midpoint. So that 47,000 figure is exactly, there's half that are lower than that and half that are above. The reason we look at an average is because it gives you an idea of the dispersion of valuation and income or household household valuation. So if you've got a big discrepancy between average and median, what it's telling you is you've got a lot of high-income people living within that area that distorts that. In this case, the difference there is, looks like what, about 20 to 30%, and that's typical of what we see around the country. But we tend to rely on median as the kind of the true number to look at because that gives you the midpoint.
Thank you.
Again, the 1,800 households, 4,400 new people, 7.2% increase. If you look at the way the new households, this is again the fourth bullet, are expected to be formed, you'll see that the largest percentage is in the under $50,000 age group or income group. And so this underscores the need to still have in place these private-public partnerships like you have with Habitat for Humanity, because there's going to be a continued need for housing that supports our lower-income households that are in the city. And these are usually situations that can't be completely solved by just the private sector alone. So keep in mind that effort's got to continue here. Bullet 5, 56% are full-time owners. In the United States, that number is closer to 65%. So we have a little bit more of a transient population here, with some of the homes being second homes. And then we look at, the new home prices here.
Stop before you go there.
Yeah.
The question that we get at a lot of commission meetings and CRA meetings when we be doing projects where it's going to be rental property, talking about what we about to price ourselves out the market. We got too many rental units. Do Boynton have too many rental units? This is what I need to know.
Well, we have that rental data in the back. You certainly have, with the remaining unit inventory, the future unit inventory within the city, it's highly skewed towards a rental right now. Out of those 1,600 or so units, 1,500 are intended to be rental, based on what the Cortina developer plan, they say that they want to do. So that leaves you with not much left in the way of master planned for sale communities. And it leads to the point of kind of what you have to think about here going forward with, what do you do about this? And how do you create a workforce housing opportunity for the private sector to get back involved. And, this is not going to be a situation where you're going to be doing 1,000 units a year, but with a lot of the vacant property that's around that can be assembled into 5 and 10 and 20 acre parcels, with the right type of zoning overlay, you can get that kind of housing activity, generate 100 or 200 housing starts a year that are in the for sale sector. That would be kind of the goal that I would think that you would shoot for initially, is along that type of volume. And what we're seeing in the market is that, especially here in Southeast Florida, with land being crucially in short supply in Broward County, Palm Beach County, that even the bigger builders now are looking at small parcels of 10 acres or 20 acres, and they're doing 20 and 30 unit projects that they would not have even considered 10 years ago. So, the primary market, the private sector market, is moving in that direction of trying to do this sort of housing that we're talking about. So you can see in that second to last bullet on this first page here, the discrepancy between the average new home price is $346,000 and the appreciation that's been going on, up 13%, versus average resale at $193,000. And we're seeing this all over Florida, especially in the coastal areas where the delta between resales and new is over 30% now. Traditionally, it's been only about a 15% premium for a new house compared to a resale, everything else being equal, same size, bedroom count, comparable community. Here in Palm Beach County, the average sales price of a new home that was built last year in 2016 for the whole county was about $650,000.
Do you see an increase in studio apartments, anything like that?
We're seeing interesting shifts in different parts of South Florida. In Miami, for example, where the high-rise condo market's been booming and catering to a lot of folks from Latin America, the currency issues there have caused that to dry up a little bit, and now some of the builders there are focusing on smaller units, 600 to 1,000 square feet. They're still costing a couple $100 a square foot because it's expensive to build down here, but now we're seeing these types of housing for sale at $250,000. When you look at your rents here in Boynton Beach, that average around $1,400 a month, that's a house payment, on a $200,000 home. So those developers are going after the local rental market instead of overseas and having some success with that. So I do see, especially as the millennials become the primary home buyers here, their home ownership rate is only 30% in the country. They don't have the same expectations and outlook as people in my generation, the baby boomers, who always wanted the bigger house, the bigger car, the corner office and everything. Well, my children don't feel that way. They could live in an 800 square foot studio apartment and be happy with that. I wouldn't be, but the next generation is going to tell the tale on how our housing is going to shape, and I think it's going to get smaller. We're setting records right now with the size of homes being built. Across the country, the average new home is 2,600 square feet. Right. So we're clearly not attacking the affordability issue at all, and a lot of it has to do with the price of land that we see, and we know that well here. So to finish up on this first page, we see very little start activity. We had about 1,000 starts a year 10 years ago within the city. A lot of that was condominium product, and of course that fell into an oversupply situation during the downturn, but it's mostly been absorbed at this point. So,
Mr. Cobb, what's YOY?
I'm sorry?
Year over year.
Year over year.
Okay.
Yeah. So a 12-month period, or comparing a point in time then to 12 months ago. So moving on to page or slide 7. Again, that vacant lot issue I described a little bit earlier, heavily skewed. You can see also in bullet number 3, just 4 years ago, these are new home closings. Almost 80% fell under $300,000, and then last year we had none under $350,000. So we've gone completely from being in the $200,000 to $300,000 price point to being over $350,000. It's a sign of success, having a great city, that your housing values are going up and that land values are going up, but then you have the other problem of dealing with the affordability side. Looking at the rental situation, again, there's that number, of $1,493 a month rent, which I look at that's a house payment. Somebody could be paying that to own a home. $1.36 a square foot is a little bit more than what you see in the county as a whole, but it's less than what is occurring down in Broward and Miami. Those rents down there average about $1.60 a square foot. So there's a little bit more of an affordability rental situation here in Palm Beach than in those other two counties. There's some future rental apartments there totaling 720 units. That Cortina project I mentioned earlier would add another 643, and therein is most of your future supply, all on the rental side. If you look at the second to the last bullet, this is where we kind of look at how this all ties together with affordability. So you see the median price is $174,000, which is relatively low. It's certainly much lower than what the new home values have been. But a lot of this is old stock. It's property where maintenance has been deferred, needs a lot of work. It could be smaller condominiums. This includes condos too. So, we have throughout South Florida a lot of fairly inexpensive condominium units that are really not that suitable for our profile of workforce that we're addressing here.
Let me ask you a question. In regards to saying workforce housing, and when we're doing projects, and we're saying that we would like for John Doe, who doesn't make the average income, to be able to live in a workforce place, what should we be looking at, saying, how many units per se that should be in a large project should be geared towards workforce housing, so that we can get people in there to help them get a start to go out and be on their own?
Yeah, I think Andrew has some detailed information on that definition, but basically we're saying that the workforce buyer is somebody that falls within 80% of the median household income up to 120%. Anybody below 80% would be considered lower income, probably not going to be served well by the private sector alone, will need some public assistance in some way, Habitat for Humanity grants and that sort of thing. Anybody that's over 120% of the median income is generally able to afford a house in the market. Whether it's the one they want is immaterial, they can still buy a house. So we're looking at that focus there. And one of the reasons is, if you look at, when you get into the demographic information there for your city, you've got about 27,000 employees or workers here in the city of Boynton Beach. Look at where they work and who they're likely to be. I mean, they're all going to fall. Almost all of them are going to fall in that area there. And so what we don't know is how many of those can't live within the city and own a home and have to live in an apartment or live outside of the area. But you can look at those census blocks and determine the characteristics there that tell you those housing values, and whether those people making that kind of an income that are working here within the city can actually afford to live within the city limits.
Thank you.
Okay, with that said, we're going to move into the recommendations. And clearly this is a city that's got a lot of, in a way, good problems. When you develop a city right and you become a place where twice as many people as the national average want to move here, that's a success. And we see that here in Delray and other cities that are doing the right things. But it does create this problem of affordable housing. And when we look at it, just to sum it up, our private sector approach to this, which is just one piece of this puzzle, is to suggest that you guys consider creating a workforce housing zoning ordinance that would have basically three legs to it. Number one, these folks are generally 25 to 50 years old. A lot of them have kids, firemen, teachers, nurses, these types of people. So you want to be able to create a single-family environment, not a condominium or apartment type of environment, a place where there's a little bit more spread out room. So this would be single-family detached and townhomes that would fall into this category. That would be your ideal situation. And you can increase the density over what we have now. We've seen different site plans all over the United States where they're addressing this, where you can get up to 10, 15 units per acre of attractive-looking product that's single-family. And Andrew has a couple of examples, I think, in his slide deck to show you of that. So that's leg number one.
Right there, Palazzo.
Yep.
Workforce housing zoning ordinance. Do we have one on the books yet?
It's being tabled, suspended.
It's moratorium. We voted on that in December.
Yeah, and what I'm suggesting is this is a zoning type, and you overlay it over whatever area within the city you want to allow builders to, what you don't want here is to have to reinvent the wheel every time. Once you've got this in place, if a builder is able to assemble 5 or 10 acres and apply, follow the rules within that zoning ordinance, they go and do it, doesn't require any public funding, it's an automatic kind of a deal that just gets approved and it's done. And the whole purpose of increasing the density is the land. If you've got $1 million and you can only put 5 units on it, that's a $200,000 lot. But if you can do 30, then you do the math, and you can see that lowers the cost that can be passed on to the consumer. And we talked earlier about, some of these impact fees, and it got me thinking: is why not take control of these impact fees? I mean, if you're writing checks here in the city for $22 million and only $3 million of it's being spent here, that tells me that you don't need to have that money spent in here. The infrastructure's already in place. So why should the builder have to pass that on to the homeowner? So leg number one is density, taking a look at that, and there's creative ways to make it look right. Leg number two is you want to make sure that now that you've got these smaller lots, that you kind of limit the size of the homes that are being built on them. You don't want some guy coming in here building a 4,000 square foot McMansion. That defeats the purpose. So you're going to want to cap the size of these homes and generally say 1,000 to 2,000 square feet, 2, 3, maybe 4 bedrooms with garages. That's sort of the range you want to play in here, so that the homes again stay in that mostly affordable price spectrum. And the third thing has to do with those impact fees and fees. The National Housing, NHB, National Home Builders Association, has estimated that about 25% of a new home's cost is fees and regulation. I mean, that's a quarter. So here's the things you can't fix. You can't fix the cost of the sticks and bricks to build a house. And the way we build here in South Florida is, you drive out there and look at new construction, it's all concrete, steel reinforced concrete block construction. That is something you can't really panelize because it has to be all tied together from the slab all the way up to the tie beam and through the roof. So it has to be built by hand. And homes are largely still, the remaining hand-built product left that we have of any significance. The problem with that is it's labor intensive. And so we can't really fix, based on our hurricane codes that we have to deal with, the windborne debris and all that, we can't fix that cost of the house, but we can address the land costs by making the denominator lower, and we may be able to influence the fee cost as well by looking at some of those. If workforce housing people don't put the same demand on your city services as others do. I mean, it's a fact that they require less in the way of police, fire, and other services. So there's a correlation to lowering impact fees for folks that are in that 25 to 50 working category over other age groups or demographic groups that do require more city services. So it's something to think about.
I had a friend approach me in this city and said that, did we ever look at boxcar housing? And he said they got him in Rivera, and I looked back at him and I took off.
That's one of the things you're going to get from citizens, are that, 15 units to an acre, these are going to be horrible. Well, I've seen $1 million homes that are ugly. Have you?
Sure.
And I've seen Habitat for Humanity homes that are very attractive. In fact, I would point you to Staghorn Villas up in Orlando, which is a townhome project that Habitat did, about 65 units. It looks as good as anything a builder could have done. And these homes sold for $139,000.
Wow.
So you want to have in your zoning ordinance, besides the size of the homes some architectural control, so you don't get a box.
Yeah.
But there's ways to do it. You know, my background's a builder. You can fenestrate the front of the home to look attractive with some nice features and make a pretty townhouse or a single-family home out of it.
Okay.
So that's my story. If we're good, then I'll pass the microphone over to Andrew.
I'm going to ask staff, these are for us to keep? Okay, I just want to make sure, because I got some notes that you don't want to read.
Okay, any questions for David before we wrap up this section?
No, he did well. You
Right,
just do
thank
it
you.
well.
Okay, just give me a second to load up our presentation.
When we're out talking like to the Heart of Boynton Association, we would like to take, not this package, we would like to take this one. I haven't even looked through it, but this is what we need to be looking at, going to Heart of Boynton.
Correct.
I do have a question for Mr. Cobb before you start. I was trying to find my notes before. I'm a little confused as to where to focus, because you mentioned the growth will be in the 25 to 50 age range, but according to this, I also saw extreme growth in the 55 plus age
Yeah,
range.
the number one is the 55 plus is the largest age group growth,
Yeah.
but the second group, which is still strong growth of just under 1,000, is going to be in that 25 to 54 group. And that's these folks that we're talking about here, primarily workers.
Okay.
So it's not the number one, but it's second.
Okay.
Yeah. You still have to deal with both the fact that lower income people are moving in here and creating households, and seniors are too. So again, this is one strata of the whole affordable housing issue here that we're trying to provide you with today.
So is creating senior housing, should that be a priority as well?
I think it has to be looked at because that's what's forecast. Now, generally speaking, your seniors that are moving in here are not falling into needing public assistance for housing. They're moving here from up north. You know, we see that all over South Florida, retiring. They have money. They're going to buy something. This type of housing we're talking about here also tends to be not that attractive to seniors because in order for it to work, it's going to be typically 2- and 3-story product. The first floor is going to have your garage and your living areas, your kitchen, living room, and all of that. And the second floor, walking up the stairs, are the bedrooms. I live in a house like that. I'm 61 years old. I'm getting real tired of walking up those stairs. You know, so a house that had all the bedrooms on the second floor, if I was in the market, I would not even consider it. So I'm not sure that seniors are going to be that interested in this type of housing because of the bedroom situation, and they're likely to look and find something else instead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, David. As we start today, just thankful that David came up and went over the housing study. I mean, I know it took a little longer than anticipated, and we had a delay with the runoff with the mayor, vice mayor. We would have been here.
Vice Mayor. I'm the Commissioner.
District
Thanks, Vice Mayor. You always are, Vice Mayor. So we wanted to talk to you about how our current housing program and where to go from here. So we're going to go through some definitions real quickly just to kind of get everybody on the same page. You know, it can be very confusing when you start talking about affordable housing versus workforce housing and ranges of what is covered. So just some ground rules here. First, when we talked about, in general, workforce housing, it refers to affordable working households with incomes too high for public subsidies, but too low for securing market rate housing in the community. That's what we consider our workforce housing category. And then when we define these workforce housing categories, we use area median income. And this is determined annually by HUD for every metropolitan region and eligibility for subsidy programs. In 2016, for a family of 4, Palm Beach County the area median income was $65,400. And then when you start talking about housing, workforce housing, you have to bring in the housing affordability factor. So again, generally this is considered the cost of rent or mortgage as a percentage of the household income. Typically, it's between 30 and 35%, and our current workforce housing ordinance is at 35%. The other aspect of workforce housing and want to talk to you about is inclusionary zoning. So again, this is a policy that requires a certain share of our new housing to be set aside for people for low and moderate incomes. That is what inclusionary zoning is.
Stay right there. 5,400 for in Palm Beach County. That's the family. Is that with 2 people working?
Yes, correct. That's correct.
2 people working.
Yes, that's a family of 4. Right. Family of 4.
But it's still with 2 people out working, mom and
2
dad.
adults, 2 children is the...
I got that,
Right.
but I know, are they out working, the mom and the dad? That's what I'm trying
Correct.
to ask the question.
Correct.
Okay? Thank you. 2 incomes.
So again, we're talking about affordable housing versus workforce housing. Affordable housing programs generally target low-income households with incomes below 80% of the AMI, area median income, with the majority of those serving households below 50%. That's what we consider affordable housing, and that's the target groups that are usually generally looked at. And as far as workforce housing programs, generally we're targeting moderate income to median income, and it starts from 80% up to 140% of AMI, area median income again.
Why did it change from 120 to 140?
This is one of the items that is, varies by different definitions.
Whoever collects the data or something?
Yeah. So really, it just depends on what your market is, who you want to target. So it just allows a little bit more flexibility in your program to go up a little bit higher to help assist them people. And again, usually this is referring to essential workers that are firefighters, teachers, police officers, and nurses. And typically a workforce housing program includes inclusionary zoning ordinances. Next slide. Okay, what I wanted to do here is we wanted to give you a graphically so you could see what the percentages and what the limit thresholds and affordable rents and estimated housing prices could be afforded based on the categories. So over here, you see on the left, you have the bracketed here. You have an affordable range and a workforce range. Across the top, you have extremely low, which represents the 30% of the AMI, the average the median income. And then you have very low, which is the 30 to 50 for the area median income. And then you have very low income, which is 50 to 80%. And these are the income limits. This is the maximum amount of money that a person could earn, or that family of 4 household could earn to qualify for that 30%. And going on down further, you see this is between 30 and 50 would be the 33,000, and then between 50 and 80 would be 53,000. And then accordingly here you see and this is per our ordinance, at 35% of the income, that person could afford $709. And they could estimate to afford a housing price of $70,000. And as you go down, you can see that correlates to each percentage in each group. Now, when you get to the workforce housing, again, we go to median income, which is the 80% to 120. For the income limit for that would be $78,480. And again, these numbers are all predicated on the 2016 Palm Beach County area median income established by HUD. So again, here you have the income limit here at 4-person household at $78,480, and you would have affordable rent at 35% of the income, which would be roughly $2,300, and they could afford a housing price of about $225,000.
So, Andrew, when we craft our ordinance, do we create it off of our AMI as in the city of Boynton Beach, or do we craft it off the AMI of the county?
Well, we can do it either way. We can use, this is published data that's available. We may take some work to get the city's AMI. This is what HUD uses. This is what we use for our qualification-based programs through our CBDG programs or our SHIP programs. So we could use this. If this is not something that you feel is adequate, we could reassess it for something that's local.
Because if I'm understanding correctly, isn't our AMI about 20,000 less than that?
Correct, yes.
So then that would allow more people to be able to qualify?
Correct. It would change the data. Okay. And this was just an example. This was just an example based on what HUD publishes.
Right.
So, so we can go to the next slide. This slide here I found from a ULI presentation, and what it's showing you is a range of inclusionary zoning programs. And when you start looking at inclusionary zoning programs, I categorize them as two different categories. You have some that are less flexible and more flexible. And then when you start looking at each component of the inclusionary zoning, you have mandatory versus voluntary. You have a set-aside amount, eligibility and terms, types and locations of the development, opt-outs, and incentives. So when you start looking at crafting our workforce housing program, you want to take into account all these different components that go into an inclusionary zoning program, and we need to decide whether we want to be less flexible or more flexible or somewhere down the middle. So this is something that we'll have to look at when we start talking about our workforce housing program ordinance and any recommended changes that we'd like to do in the future. Okay, so the key elements to our current city workforce housing program inclusionary zoning ordinance is who's it applicable to? Currently, it's on developments requesting density in excess of 10 dwelling units per acre, or major modifications to an approved site plan that has access to 10 units per acre. Now, the major modification would only be assessed on the difference between what was previously approved and an increase in density that they were requesting. So, for instance, if they had 100 units and they requested 120, we would only assess it on the 20 units. And then again, our current ordinance, as it sits now, has a set-aside program. And this is, when this was crafted, this was done at a time when the peak of the market, and we were looking at for sale product. So what you see here is the percentages are geared more towards as if we were in a for sale product. There was a lot of for sale product being developed. Right now you see that our current ordinance is 20% of the high and special high density residential, 15% of the mixed use, and 10% of the mixed use core. Now these set asides are not only just for the for sale product, but also for any rental projects that go along with that as well. And just to note that this program restricts that for 30 years by deed restriction. So any of these set-asides would have to be kept for 30 years. And when you start looking on that, again, that range, that chart that I had that showed from less flexible to more flexible, this would be on the less flexible side as a 30-year term looking at. And then again, you look at the unit breakdown per income group. Our current ordinance right now, as it sits, has a 25% low income mix and a 75% moderate income mix. And this is something, again, you want to look at for flexibility in our ordinance as well. Next slide. As a part of our existing ordinance, we also have some opt-out options, again mentioned in that range of components that go with the inclusionary zoning ordinance. Our current ordinance has an opt-out option which only can be engaged when 80% of the sales prices exceed $500,000. Now, these prices were set when the market was at the peak. So this is one of the things that we definitely need to look at in our ordinance when we go to look at it, is reevaluation of these prices and these thresholds and these values. So once the project, or they decide to use the opt-out option and it hits the 80% of the sales prices exceed 500, the developer would have an option here based on the unit type to pay a fee in lieu per unit. So at the current rates right now, a one-bedroom unit, they could pay $60,000. For a two-bedroom unit, they could pay $80,000. And for a three-bedroom unit, they would pay $100,000. Additionally, as a part of that opt-out, they could actually purchase land and donate it to the city, which would equate to the same amount of money, or purchase existing market rate units and convert them or deed restrict them as workforce housing or affordable, or they could actually build units off-site on a different site. Next slide. As a part of our exercise, we went through and looked at other jurisdictions to compare what our ordinance is compared to those. On this side here, you can see the elements of a inclusionary workforce housing program. You can see the mandatory versus voluntary, the incentives, whether it's density or intensity bonus, height bonus, parking reductions, fee reductions, expedited permits, other type of incentives, geographical applicability, and fee in lieu. And you can see currently some of the other markets like Boca, Lake Worth, and Green Acres have no workforce housing programs, no workforce housing ordinances. And then on the other side of that, you see Delray, West Palm, and Palm Beach Gardens. They do have them, but they are in a voluntary type of program. And as part of that voluntary program, they give you density bonuses and height bonuses. And then you see our program right now as it sits, even though it's in suspension, is a mandatory program, but there's no density bonus, no height bonus, no parking reductions, so there's very little incentive for them to participate because it's a mandatory program. And then Jupiter has a program which is also mandatory, and as well as Palm Beach County. So when we're looking at this inclusionary zoning and the projects, you have to think about the economics of a development project and the key factors that are what's going to generate workforce housing. So one of the things that you want to do with the workforce housing ordinance, you want to leverage the new market rate developments to provide those housing units. And again, this only works when there's new development that's occurring. If we're not building units, there's really not a point to having a workforce housing ordinance. Well, at least one that's inclusionary zoning. The other part of that is a successful workforce housing program relies on understanding of that market rate development. You have to understand the economics of that. Next slide. And again, this is a slide that I took out of a ULI study. It shows the 4 key factors when you're looking at and evaluating a market rate development. And you can see you have land, market feasibility, capital, and then public policy. And you can see is these 4 circles overlap only when they come together where you get a development to occur. So if any one of these are out of line or outside the sphere here, you can see that these are when the market doesn't happen. This is when development doesn't happen. So if land prices are way out of line, then you would see that market's not developing. Or if there's not access to capital, or there's just not the feasible pricing or rent stable or sales prices available in that market, you'll see a development not happen. Again, if any one of these factors are out of line, that would keep a project from going forward. And again, you look at public policy, this would be zoning or inclusionary zoning or any regulations that the city would have. Next slide. So we started talking about the pros and cons of a workforce housing program as a part of the inclusionary zoning. One of the pros is it's a tool that provides workforce housing. It is a good tool. It does provide workforce housing when development's occurring. It promotes income-integrated communities. It encourages a dense urban development in targeted areas. It assists with, in our ordinance, it assists with satisfying the requirement of our transportation concurrency exception area. And some of the cons of it is when you have lack of for sale units like we have here in the city currently, you're not really producing that much workforce housing based on the ordinance. One of the other cons is currently we don't have a fee in lieu or any opt-out options for rental projects. We also have a lack of incentive as far as the density bonuses. As you saw on the chart with the comparisons, you saw the incentives. Boynton, because of ours is mandatory, they don't have a lot of incentives. And then finally, it can discourage development. Our tax base, it can restrict supply and also increase housing costs in certain situations.
Andrew?
Yes.
So just based on what our current suspended ordinance looks like, it'd be safe to characterize it as all stick and no carrot whatsoever?
Correct.
I'm sorry, what was your question?
What was that?
It was they were saying that it's mandatory, however, there's no incentives.
Correct. Right now, it's because it's an...
Stop. I'm trying to figure out what did Vice...
I said, given the current conditions of the ordinance that we have that's suspended, it's mandatory and requires things, but does not offer any incentive, no carrot.
No carrot, that's what I was trying to hear. Thank you.
Okay. Some of the areas of concern, and I've already talked about some of these, our current outdated condition of our suspended ordinance, the sales price threshold for the eligibility of the off-site options, payment in lieu amounts, those are based on the peak period, providing affordable housing for the required TCA. So if we If we do away with the whole program, we still have to look to see how we are going to ensure that there's some workforce housing being generated as a part of our TCA.
Andrew, maybe I missed the acronym. What is TCA?
It's Transportation Concurrency Exception Area.
Thank you.
So this was a document that was created by the CRA. They hired a consultant, and what they did was they created an exception area within the downtown area. I believe it's just within the downtown and Boynton Beach Boulevard, and it gives an exception for concurrency, for traffic concurrency. So it basically caps the amount of trips and the amount of requirements that the city has, and it gives an exception for that. So you're already providing that concurrency, and so there's just, you get an exception. You're not having to do any additional work they provide the data to the county for the study.
Simply,
Meaning that they wouldn't have to do a traffic study?
Well, they still have to do a study. So what they do is, because what the county wants is you have two different exception areas. You have the coastal residential exception area, and you have the TCA, which is the traffic concurrency exception area. This is more geared towards commercial development, and the others were geared toward residential. You know, the county wants to push, instead of this urban sprawl, they wanting to see everybody come back east and be more dense populated in the downtown areas. So this was a way for the county to work with the municipalities to create exception areas so that they wouldn't have to do and widen roads or add turn lanes or increasing the capacity at intersections. So the CRA did a study to create this block of approved density and trips. And when they set that threshold, the county just monitors it now. So what happens is any time that we have a project, they do a study, they submit it to the county, and then they say, yes, you're still within your exception area, and we approve your project, and you don't have to do any additional improvements.
We should add, it's not that simple. We make commitments. If you look at the policy itself, which is adopted into the comprehensive plan for the county, we have commitments. At a certain stage of development, we might need to reinstitute a trolley system. Well, there's things that are going to offset traffic. Something else would be obviously providing for greater workforce housing or affordable housing. I think is going to have a greater habit of using mass transit. So the public might be concerned with that, saying, we're again just opening up the floodgates to development and traffic going to improve. If you look at the policy in theory, it's offset.
Thanks, Mike. That's a great point. So again, as we're going back down to the areas of concern here, one of the other things that is a part of our ordinance is there's our current workload and the requirements of the ordinance. Right now, it requires some monitoring and oversight of the program. And since the exception of the program in 2006 or 7, there's been no activity as far as implementation of workforce housing. So there's been no work associated with it as far as staff monitoring projects going forward. So this is something that we would have to look at if we started developing workforce housing units. This is something that the workload of staff, we may have to look at potentially additional personnel or outsourcing of it as possible.
Let me ask a question in regards to when we be doing projects that we be saying, well, we want workforce housing like the one that Ocean East that is being planned by St. John. Are we looking at workforce housing, or are we just saying that we'll look at it and we're not doing anything? What are we doing?
Well, that would be a great project because that would satisfy a lot of these requirements because a lot of that project would classify and meet those thresholds for workforce housing and affordable housing. Okay. So by using that money and leveraging whatever they're going to use it, whether it's through tax credits or through the sale program or any TIF money or anything that the CRA would kick in, that would help offset some of the requirements here for workforce housing. Those would provide it through one project.
Okay.
The focus of a workforce housing ordinance in a community is designed to effectively incentivize affordable housing where it would not otherwise be built. It doesn't relate to affordable housing projects that are intended to be built. It's to incentivize an Ocean 1 or a 500 Ocean if they were for sale units, or if you could apply it to rental, to include some of these category of housing within that community that they would not normally want to do. It would not apply to a Ocean Breeze East or our Ocean Breeze West project. When you intend to do affordable housing, this sits over there. When you have a private sector development that wants to just do market rate, that's when this would kick in and force him, if you chose to voluntarily or mandatorily include housing.
But when we spend TIF dollars, I'm just saying this is what we're spending it for, workforce housing. This is what I need.
It is not as it relates, well, excuse me. We are using TIF dollars to create our own affordable housing projects.
Okay.
We are not using TIF to incentivize developers of market rate housing to build affordable housing.
Thank you.
And again,
That brings up a question, though. Can we?
Of course.
So that can
It's
be
your
part of
money, you
the
can incentivize.
mandatory list where we incentivize them or dangle a carrot like Vice Mayor Katz says?
Yes, you don't have to have an ordinance to ask a developer who is wanting your TIF funding to, consider building workforce housing or additional housing units that would, maybe even it might be moderate, the 120 and above or something. You can use that as leverage to get something for those TIF dollars if you choose to, and if the developer is willing to do that.
Well, and again, to that point, I mean, if it was the board's direction or the commission's direction, the CRA could build those workforce housing as a part of that project. So as if the fee in lieu portion of this, if the developers were to pay that money, you then use that money from the housing trust money, which is where this money would go into a trust at the city, and you could use those dollars to purchase land, or similar to what the CRA does, to build types of projects that would be in that range, affordable or workforce housing.
Okay.
Next slide. Yep. Just to summarize kind of some of the Metro study key findings, David talked about the population growth. There's 4,400 residents projected to grow in the next 5 years. And again, the biggest numerical increase is in the home buying range was the 55 to 74 age group, which was expected to be about 1,200 people in that range. The 2016 median income, household income, is $47,580. That's the Boynton Beach median income. Over the next 5 years, the largest number increase is projected in this category for income group is the $50,000 income group. They're the largest number increase. Also, as part of his findings in the Metro study, in 2016, 46% of the 2,071 house sales, this includes single-family home, townhomes, and condos, could be afforded by a household making the median income of $47,580. And then lastly, one of the key findings is there are 24 rental communities in the city with roughly around 7,500 units with an average 1,100 square feet apartments. Current occupancy levels of those are around 92%, and the average rent is around $1,500, and this would require about $5,300, $800, which is slightly above what the median income is for what a household could afford. So based on our current rent levels, we're slightly higher than what the median income household that we're showing now of $47,000 is you would need to be about $54,000. Next slide. Summarize some of the Metro study key recommendations. Redevelopment of public-private underused properties. Changing some of the zoning code to allow for smaller lots, reduce setbacks and smaller units. Assistance with first-time low-income buyers to help fix up their newly acquired purchased homes. Expanding our partnerships with the Boynton Beach Faith-Based Community Development Corporation or Habitat or other partners that are out there. And then in those programs, in trading their sweat equity for better pricing, which is the model for Habitat. Additional public-private partnerships. And lastly, one of the things that the developers and builders like to see as a part of this program is expedited and streamlined approvals, as you know, time is money. This slide here, I want to just give you a little snapshot. I know our maps are kind of hard to read, so I just blew this up. This is a vacant land infill map of the whole city boundary, and you can see that this is roughly the heart of Boynton area. So I took that swath of that map and blew it up over here, and you can see the scattered lots and infill projects that could be done in this area, which is a majority of that area. You can see a lot of it right here is on MLK Boulevard here. This is actually the model block area. These are some of the housing authority lots that are back in Cherry Hill. And then these are some of the, this is St. John's vacant parking lot. I believe that's the Ocean Breeze East site. So you can see there is quite a bit of opportunity for either doing single family on infill lots, or even maybe assembling like some of the housing authority lots and make it into a 2 or 3 acre or 1 to 2, 3 acre site, which you could do multiple units on.
Now, the property that's over on Cherry Hill that's owned by the Housing Authority, has anyone approached Housing Authority and said, are you all going to do anything with this land over here?
Yes, we've had several conversations, actually going back to before when Nancy was here. Myself and Vivian, and we went and met with the housing director at that time, which is no longer there. And then I think just recently, Mike Simon, the interim director of the CRA, he's actually had meetings with them as well. We've gotten very little cooperation from them. I know at one time they had a contract with Auburn Development to do their, they had an option on all these lots that they owned here, and they approached the city to possibly do a land swap where they would give us the land and trade us for our parcel out on Nichols Boulevard. But when we looked at the appraisals, it didn't work. But we have approached them. I think we may need to take a little bit different tactic and start working from maybe a political level to get some support from them. They definitely are a partner. They have a lot of land, and we definitely need to be working in partnership with them instead of just two ships going in opposite directions.
Yeah, see that's my concern, is that since, I represent District 2, we need to kind of put some pressure there, because it's just sitting there, nothing is happening, and we can develop the property. I'm just saying, we have Commissioner Mack up there now.
Exactly.
I'm just saying we need to go to the players and say we need to start doing something, and I'm just saying,
And that's definitely on our radar, that we look to garner some support from you and Commissioner Bernard at the county, and see if we can get some assistance in getting them to the table, because at this point they haven't really been forthcoming in meeting with us. So
thank you.
This is an example of an infill project that you can see. You see it's smaller lots, very dense. You can see that you can get a lot more density on this size project. This would be something that could fit on an assemblage where we could do multi-family units. Now, these are all single-family for sale units. This wouldn't be attached or units or rentals or apartments or condos.
What will those houses go for?
This is just a sample project, but I mean, currently, like if you look at the model block project, the houses that were just dedicated yesterday, they were appraised at 185, and those are in the 1,300 to 1,500 square foot range. So I would think that you could.
So that's workforce housing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Next slide. This is an example that came to us. I think I forgot the name. Lake Boynton Estates or somewhere over there's a parcel there in the middle of that community. They came in with this option. It doesn't really work for the zoning there, but I thought I'd bring this out because, I mean, this would be in the middle of that neighborhood, but this is a good example of an infill project where you see these are 35-foot lots. So you have basically where you would have one house, this would be one single-family house, has now become two, but they're attached. So this is another option that we could look at in some of our rewrites to start allowing some type of units like this in an overlay area. Next slide. And this is just some examples I picked up off the internet. This is a townhouse. You can see right here that how close together they are. I mean, although they're close, you can see it's still an attractive building. And David talked about, you know, this not being for the 55 to 74 range because of the 3 stories, but this is, you know, for that under the working class, which is the 24 to 50 range. This might be a unit that they would look at.
That's like the boxcar, what I was talking about.
But oddly enough, this is what's really selling hot now. If you look at some of these markets, like in Seattle and Portland, and this is what they're going to. And that millennial market that's that's moving out of those rental units that are starting families, this is the type of product they're going to. A lot less maintenance, energy efficient, it's just a better product. This is a nice example. It gives you more of the common area shared approach. This isn't a good representation of what the square footage of a building would be, but I liked how it showed the driveways and the shared and the common areas. And again, one of the other options here is like Habitat does, they do a community land trust. So that also helps when you're doing workforce housing programs. Next slide. So again, so some of the potential changes that we looked at for our workforce housing inclusionary zoning ordinance would obviously was to improve the incentives to garner more program participation. One of the items that we could look at is converting it from a mandatory to a voluntary program. We could look at adding some density bonuses, height bonuses, and we could also look at the set-aside percentages. Maybe this is something that we want to be more flexible on instead of, right now I think we're on the less flexible side. Again, the other thing would be adjust the outdated condition with the sales price threshold, and then also the payment in lieu amounts would be brought up to the current values, which would most likely be a reduction in the value or the amount. Again, offering an opt-out program for our rental developments. Right now, there is no option. That would be another option that we could add, is an opt-out option for rental developments, which would allow for the fee in lieu or land dedication or possibly purchasing or donating units or building off-site. Some of the other changes that we looked at, potential changes, were LDR changes or rewrite changes that would create this framework in our regulations that would potentially, like I mentioned, was do a targeted area or for some overlay regulations that would encourage affordable or workforce housing. So we could look at certain areas, like if in the heart of Boynton, like on the Palm Beach County Housing Authority area, we could write a overlay regulation that might spur some additional units there. And some of this micro units is a very buzzword right now that you're hearing out there. And I just read an article in West Palm Beach where in the downtown they had a project that Mr. Green had proposed. The current regulations required 650 square feet, and they were allowing them to go to 350 square feet. So, you know, obviously that helps when you're getting additional density. Accessory units, this is like granny flats or mother-in-law quarters, something that they could include for rent. More flexibility in the lot sizes, that's that infill project, you know, looking at the size and the configuration of the lots. And then again, reduced parking. You know, that's a key part of this, is because when you start looking at the developments, our current regulations in our mixed-use regulations require it at 1.33. 1.33 spaces for every unit. And when you go to the one bedroom or the micro units, you still would be 1.33. So reducing it down to requiring maybe just one or one car per unit, that would help, because obviously you don't want to add additional costs for parking on a project when they're trying to make it affordable. And then other considerations would be to promote the program would be direct subsidies, which we mentioned about the impact fees. I know that I just received an email from the county, the Department of Economic Sustainability. They sent out an email that they have some impact fees that they're looking for assistance program. So there's something there that we could look at, is partnering with the county, because they do take a portion of their road impact fees and offer them up as credits towards affordable workforce housing programs. And then the last thing would be community land trust. This is something that goes back to like the Ocean Breeze West model or the Habitat model, where they control the cost of the land and the resale price of the units, and it keeps the project in an affordable or attainable purchase price. With that, staff is recommending that we look at a voluntary program and these LDR changes, and just to incentivize our program to help support the workforce housing. Next steps is we're looking for some consensus on the staff recommendations here you saw in this presentation. Right now, the current ordinance is set to expire or go live again, which would be December 14th, 2017. So this would put us on a track that would get us a new ordinance in place. Depending on what we decide, this could be adjusted. So And with that, I'll open up to questions.
You know, I really want to tell you personally, thank you for this eye-opener, not only for me, but I'm just saying probably for everybody in this community. But what you need to do is take this, when people are coming to us and saying, are you all including workforce housing, you know, and those same individuals, like the Heart of Boynton, we got now that group that started up, they have their meetings and stuff. This would be a nice place to take this and let them know what is required for workforce housing, so when they're standing before us, somebody, we want workforce housing, then this is what we have to do.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is as we go forward in the future, and once we have some direction on this, is I think we're going to take this show on the road a little bit, and we'll probably start doing some more community outreach, where I'll actually go out and do some speaking engagements and do presentations like this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to hear back from the community, and then the other thing is that. Kind of to my questions last night, can we do stuff to allow more duplexes in single-family homes?
Right. Yeah, right. That would be that overlay zoning district. So that would be a part of that rewrite that we would look at, for instance, looking at providing overlays where you could do additional density on it, and it would be the width of the lots, or, you know, depend, like the one I showed.
I mean, it's almost just, you know, I was looking at the zoning districts. It's for a duplex, you need 75 feet of frontage. Right. You know, that's not going to happen with any of our single-family homes, and so unless you're like that property over in Lake Boynton Estates that has that.
So we would look at writing some kind of overlay regulations that targeted certain areas that would incentivize it. So,
but you know, for me, I'm not doing it in certain areas. I'm saying pretty much all of Boynton to have that opportunity, because you know, we want this workforce housing. We have to make it feasible for these developers, and you know, the point is that I think we can have in our LDRs to make it compatible with the single-family homes, that, you know, make it so that there isn't, you know, we could say that you can't have too many duplexes in a certain area.
Okay.
So that's my comments.
I'm in favor of looking at that too. I know that former Commissioner Fitzpatrick mentioned that, and I agree with him on this. If the government's going to be expending taxpayer dollars for affordable or workforce housing, then we need to maximize our return and be able to build as many units as we can while still maintaining desirability. And like, you know, was stated and what seems obvious in the market is that people don't need 2,000 square foot houses anymore, and some people don't want that. And again, if it's a government assisted program, then, you know, maybe you don't get the luxury of having a really, really nice luxurious house. You might have to live in a smaller unit, which could still be as luxurious. People can dump lots of money into making an 800 square foot house into a, you know, a luxury environment. But yeah, I'm more in favor, as much as I like, you know, the model block, and it looks amazing. If you could put twice as many units and still maintain the desirability of the product, then you get twice as many families into that same space.
Right.
Andrew, would that pertain to all of Boynton or just certain areas of the city? I mean, once you get west of the 95.
Oh, that's something that we'd have to.
Would they be able to do the same things that we're proposing here?
What we were proposing was targeted areas. What the mayor and was talking about was citywide. I don't know that we would want citywide, but you know, for sure you'd want targeted areas. I don't know that if, and you know, Lake Boynton Estates is a prime example. You have a majority of a single-family neighborhood there that, you know, the neighbors may not want. Now that product there, if you look at those two units, they actually may look very similar to what's out there. If you start looking at the units and those sizes, that actually may look like a single-family home, just kind of like a townhouse. So it may fit in certain circumstances, but you know, I don't know that it would work citywide. That's why we're saying targeted areas. I think it would need a little bit more of a look and study of what areas you want to do this in, and where it would be successful. Because remember, you still have defined. You looked at that map. There wasn't much vacant land out west. It was mostly in.
The other thing is that one of the recommendations is reduce parking requirements. Every project that's come before us, that's been the main subject. If you don't have a place to park, don't build it.
Yeah.
Now you're suggesting to reduce parking requirements.
And that's associated with a bonus. If we were to give them a bonus as to incentivize it, let's just say get 40 units per acre, and we say, all right, we're going to allow you to do 50 units per acre, and it's a 10 differential. Well, we want them to start building smaller units, so and to make them affordable. Because when you went from 650 at the $1.36 a square foot, you just cut that unit in half. You cut the rent in half. And a lot of times, you know, those people there that person that's going to rent that unit may be taking the bus, or maybe it's just one person. So there's no need for 1.33 cars. So we're just saying reducing it down to what's required to be one, instead of, looking at the ratios. Yeah, just for that percentage of the workforce, not the whole project, just the ones that the incentivized units. So we're incentivizing. We're not going to make you put in all the cars that you need for those units, but we'll give you a reduction just for the workforce housing or the affordable units.
Let me ask the question, if you do a duplex on a 75, what I think is what he said, can you park 4 cars in front of that duplex? Because this is what because this is what we're going to run into problems, because they're going to be parking on the streets. This is why I'm saying
that is one of the challenges, is parking for a duplex like that. It depends on how you design it. I mean, it depends on the length of the lot. It depends on how many garages, how many units they can get in the garage, in the depth of the lots.
And I believe that's where community standards comes in as well, enforcing that parking and making sure if there's only supposed to be 2 individuals or
Correct.
2 cars allowed, and then they don't overcrowd the parking.
Correct.
I'm sorry. Wasn't that some of the issue down at Casa Del Mar, when they were building that down there, that project there, the parking? The 1-car garage, 2 cars?
What do you mean? It's under construction now.
It's under construction now, but when it was coming through the planning division or anything like that, about the parking, not enough parking down there? Or the driveways weren't big enough to hold 2 cars?
Right, well, all their parking was, they had parking within the units. They met their requirements within the units. And then they had the guest parking outside as well. So they met their requirements. They didn't have a per se driveway. And if you go back to that example, you look at those, can you go back to that example with yeah, not that one there. You can see right here, this right here is kind of that example. Well, those units would be inside there, inside the 2-unit garage, the car garage. And then you could park, and you see this in a lot of those neighborhoods where they park the car parallel right here. So
The Casa Del Mar project has 2-car garages?
Yes.
And I can't say it's fully tested right now, but what we have done, learning from the past and some parking issues that we've been put notice on, where the development is under some type of unified control, HOA control, condominium rule, we've required them to put into their documents the requirement that the garage be used for the storage of a vehicle and not miscellaneous material.
Are we able to do that potentially on?
That's what I said. We haven't fully tested, but we have had developers say, we normally do that in some communities anyway.
Because that's how in the townhouses of Renaissance, we had issues with parking, and it's in our documents. And yeah, people who elect to make their garage a storage facility are, essentially breaking the expected parking situation. And I think that, if parking is going to be an issue, and if we're going to try to lower the amount of parking necessary as an incentive, then the language to mandate that you can't waste your garage and eat up a parking space on the street or outside, that otherwise, you've got to play by the rules.
Yeah, that's...
Also, it's important. I don't think there's any issue, and I think you would agree with us, that if they count that garage as part of the LDR parking requirement, it needs to be maintained as parking. I think it's very legitimate.
And that's an illegal conversion that you would see. And I saw...
Who's going to go around checking garages?
Well, I mean, what you get is when you have the HOA that comes and says that they're having issues. I mean, I know that, for instance, they started a sticker program where they started, because they were having people parking in the guest parking. People who have a resident, they were parking their cars. So they were regulating their parking. And then, you go back through. I know when I lived in Olympia, if you parked in the swale overnight, if you were parked outside of your unit, they would tow your car. You come out in the morning, your car's gone. So these are the things that the HOAs are using. It just depends on the HOA and how forceful they want to be, or how much they want to live with.
Okay, so
tonight,
yeah.
oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I just want to say tonight, I think, don't we want, right, go through our potential changes in terms of getting some direction from the commission to allow us to move forward with crafting either changes to the existing ordinance. I do believe ours is quite restrictive, especially when you compare it to all of the other cities in the county. So I think we need to, we want to talk, number one, voluntary versus mandatory. And then perhaps the other key, go to the potential changes slide. Go back to, so we can walk through each of those items and get some direction from the commission. No, there's one before that. That. I think we need to start the conversation there to kind of give us some sense of where your heads are in terms of considering mandatory versus voluntary. Then do you want us to go in and perhaps try to loosen up our language a little bit in some areas? I know the numbers in the existing ordinance that's suspended were numbers based on the height of the market, where they were $100,000 set aside for a three-bedroom unit, which today is absolutely insane to expect that out of a developer. So those numbers were right before the bubble burst. So those absolutely need to be brought up to date. And take a look at all those elements that we've gone through tonight and have us bring you something back.
Lori, I actually have to go right now, but I kind of want to have the crab board, I don't know, just to have some more public input before we give staff direction, what we want to see.
Well, this isn't CRA specific, is it?
Oh, no, this is for our whole city.
Correct. I just wanted to see if, this is a public meeting, so we could ask if we wanted to put it on the crab board to have some public input, what they would want to see in the workforce housing and how they would try to get the incentivize of the developers to have it.
I don't have a problem with them looking at it, but I don't want to wait and not give guidance.
Well, and I know Commissioner Romulus, and we've talked about it many times. I know, that will, I just want you all to be aware of the timing. What that does is delay us. It delays us. We're looking, I think, at the best case scenario of bringing something forward by December to go ahead and do what we recommend, which is taking a look at our existing ordinance, fix that up, and then also move forward in future phases to address all of our LDRs with the way we can allow some of this the micro units and the unique type of style of different types of housing than the traditional single-family 50, 60-foot lot. So we need time. We need some time to do that. We want to get working on it, so I wanted to get some sense from you tonight. But
Let me say this. I'm just saying in regards to what the language that we already have on the books, like when the attorney sends something to us, he always puts it in red and said, this is what we would like to see changes. I'm just saying, if you all could do that and send that to us, then I feel comfortable sitting there reading that and said, I like this, I don't like this.
And that's what we're asking for tonight, but we wanted to get a sense from you of how do you want us to address those changes? I think key, the mandatory versus voluntary is a big policy decision that we need to have a sense of where we're going on. And then yes, what we would do is take the time to draft those ordinance changes and bring it back to you. That's all we're asking for tonight.
Okay. Well,
not to adopt anything. I mean, we've got to go write it.
I have some suggestions, and I'm ready to give them. So first and foremost, I am not in agreement that we should wait all the way until December to reenact this and bring this back. I believe that we can make some minor changes and make some movements that will allow these ordinance to come back a lot sooner. I remember in our December meeting, I was informed by staff that we would be able to create something within a 6-month or so window, that it would be able to be brought back and be feasible and put back into play. Am I correct in remembering that?
Yeah, when we talked about that, we looked at also potentially, it was workload, because again, we were looking at with the current redevelopment plan requirements and some of the zoning changes that we had coming forward, plus the projects, it was more of a workload thing. I think we could have met the timeline. It's just with the current workload, it's a little difficult.
Understood. And I agree you guys are working very hard, and I commend you guys on all your hard work. But what I also understand is that in the meantime that this ordinance has been placed on moratorium, we've missed so many opportunities where we could have allowed workforce housing to be built into projects that are being built currently, or at least create in lieu of payments with developments that came. So I don't want this continuation to keep happening.
Okay.
Right, and just for clarity, for what's in place now, none of that would have probably happened. And that's where we need to, have this talk now and get this, and to be able for us to do something. I think, Andrew, on the actual, John, the ordinance alone part, not the LDRs and rewriting all that stuff, that's, I know, is going to take quite some time.
Right.
If we went back in and, if we get some direction tonight on mandatory versus voluntary, but to go adjust the density bonuses and all that, I mean, could we do it over the next few months, next 4 months? Not that I know, I'm putting you totally on the spot, I'm sorry.
Written down. So if we were going to go back and just look at amending the current ordinance,
right,
and doing any conversion from a mandatory to a voluntary, look at the actual density bonus and height bonus that may needed to incentivize it, and maybe look at the set-aside percentages to lower them, and then adding everything here, I think we could have something to the P&D board in July,
Yeah.
which would come back to you in August and September.
Right.
That sounds better.
Yeah. And that's just tweaking the
and we
ordinance
could-
we have so far. And then, you know, a lot of the, I think the real heavy lifting will get into, again, addressing how we address our zoning.
And what we could do is we could run it like we did with the medical cannabis ordinance. We could start taking a stab at drafting this up and bring it back to you and just let you look at that ordinance and get some dialogue then. And then we could go back to the P&D board and through that process. So, you know, we might be able to shoot for something like that, maybe at the, well, we're not having a first meeting in July, but maybe sometime in June, the second meeting in June, possibly, to have a draft ordinance, or at least an outline of what we're wanting to change.
Yeah.
And I agree with whatever the quickest time frame we can to produce this, as long as it, conforms to new expectations, because just on its face, that old ordinance is terrible.
Terrible.
I absolutely agree. So this is why I have some suggestions as to how we can change it. So first and foremost, let's start with the whole mandatory to voluntary thing. So I do believe that we need to get a little bit more lax on our requirements. So if you go to that whole, from that blue to green that you kind of have.
Table.
No. Just the range.
The city compared.
There.
Yeah.
Where I want to kind of be in the whole middle of that, where, because I want you to explain something to me about the whole voluntary thing. So that means that they don't have to do it, we just have it there and they just can choose not to do it if they don't want to?
Correct. It's a voluntary, but you incentivize it. You make it worth their while that they want to do it.
That they want to do. And that's what Delray does.
So that's where you're giving them that density bonus, and then that also looks at those reduction in parking, so that you want to incentivize it, allow them to do the smaller units, allow them to get a reduction in parking just for those units, not for the whole project.
Okay.
So that's those incentives, because once you make it worthwhile and it makes it feasible for them, they're going to do it.
Okay.
And that's the premise of all the voluntary programs.
Great.
And I want to just point something out, too, that was my observation when we went through this today for my review. But when you look at the chart of what all the cities do, right, the two that have the mandatory outside of ours, which we know is stale, but the Gardens and Jupiter, they're they're two cities that are in a very different place than Boynton Beach is, and David mentioned it earlier, in terms of the actual development going on. They're in a much better position, I think, to do the hardcore mandatory requirements, because they're just blowing up with development. They have tons of vacant land, and they're just building like crazy. We're in a little bit of a different situation, and that's why, and you see, Delray's even ahead of us, as we know, in terms of the development side of it, is going more voluntary, but with the incentives. So they want to build it. And then Delray gets some good participation in their program, as far as some of the programs. And they have the targeted areas that we talked about as well. I went through their ordinance. They have very specified areas where these things apply. So that's the difference, I think, the voluntary and mandatory. But
Okay, so for the density bonus, for example, we already have the TOD bonus. How would adding another density bonus to that, what would happen with that?
So we could look at the number of units that we're providing. I think it's 20%, 20% bonus. So we could take away some of that bonus there and incentivize it, or add on top of that. So we could say it's 20 and then do a workforce housing bonus on top of that, where
So
they could get another 5 or 10.
25, I believe.
Or, yeah, 20 or 25.
Right.
So we could add on top of that to incentivize it. Or you could substitute. Or substitute. We could take, call a percentage of that TOD bonus has to be workforce housing. If you're going to do the TOD, certain percentage that has to be workforce
I'd like
housing.
that.
Or we could add to it.
I don't, somebody would have to tell me a little bit more about how much is too much density, but if we could maybe work it into where the 25% TOD bonus is incorporated into the workforce housing
Right.
bonus, then I think that could potentially work.
Again, it's the balance of density, height, and parking. These all come into play.
Right.
So, that would be something that we would bring back to you and look at.
Okay, so I think density is something to put into play. Height, I don't think we should touch, because I think that's a touchy subject for a lot of people. Definitely lower set-aside percentages, and I would want to entertain the possibility of changing around these percentages where, again, I know this will change once we put the CRA consolidated plan into place with all this, but you have the mixed-use core at 10%, the mixed-use at 15%, and you have the high and special high at 20%. I honestly believe that those numbers should be reversed. and also decreased in order, like you said, to make it more incentivized. So I would potentially go 10, 7, and 5. I'm throwing out numbers out here.
Right.
I guess you and staff can work on making something that actually works and is more palatable, but I'd like to see those variations.
Okay.
So you're saying you want to lower the percentages of mandatory?
One of the things is, again, when the ordinance was crafted, it was crafted for sale product. And most of the sale product was in the special high and high density residential. That's why you saw the numbers were kind of reversed. So now that we're in the rental mode or condo mode, we would change it upside down and then also look at it as where we fall in that flexible, less flexible, more flexible scale and come up with a percentage that would work. And then the only other thing is whether we wanted it to be voluntary or mandatory. I think we definitely need.
I believe voluntary would, especially from what Lori has just mentioned, I think voluntary would be the right direction to go.
Okay.
But we also want to make sure we sweeten the deal.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm hoping to do with
Sure.
this, with changing around these different set-asides and everything. So the other thing.
I think that works well with it if we used a portion of the TOD bonus to call that the voluntary section.
Yes.
Because right now they're just getting it. So now we'd say if you want that TOD bonus, you're going to have to build us some units out of that.
Sounds good.
Right. Then we also give them the flexibility with the sizes and the parking.
Awesome. All right, so the other portion of the ordinance that talks about off-site options, because we wrote this in terms of sales, should we change the language or should we keep that and just add another portion about rentals?
Yeah, we would keep probably the same language. We maybe tweak it a little bit. We definitely have to look at the numbers, and then we definitely would want to add a rental opt-out for it. Some opt-out options for rental projects. So if they decide they just wanted to pay into the fund. Right. Well, opt-out, because they could do in lieu of, they could purchase land, they could
Yes.
buy land and donate it to the city.
I still want those in lieu of
Right.
options possible, yes.
Correct.
Okay.
It'll apply to both now, which we need to do.
The Boynton Beach Housing Trust, is this something that still exists?
This is what she's talking
think
about,
so.
is there's, in the current ordinance, it calls for a trust to be set up, and I think we just didn't have it set up because we haven't had any revenue from the.
Does the CDBG use a trust, though? Is it the same trust? Yeah, that's okay.
The in lieu money.
Right. We have a framework in place right now in the CDBG program, so that's not an issue to create. Right. Community improvement.
This is to ensure that in no way, shape, or form anybody ever touches this money for
Right. It
general.
can only be used for that.
Correct.
Very restricted.
It's like an enterprise fund where it only goes to use for that specific purpose. Right. Currently, we have it with the green building fee. Green building fee is the same kind of account. All that money goes right in and it funds green building programs.
Angela, if this was come to fruition in the next 6 months or so, what projects would this new ordinance affect?
Right now on the horizon, I think it would just be Town Square.
The Town Square project?
It wouldn't affect other
It's voluntary, I mean,
Yeah, correct.
and some of the language is going to some of the projects you're talking to the CRA, so you could use some of the framework.
Yeah, because this would affect the project that St. John is going to do if they do that project, I'm just saying.
Right. So this doesn't apply to that at all.
Right, okay.
Well, they could get the bonus because they already meet the criteria for the affordable and workforce housing. So they could get the bonus without having to.
I know.
Okay, and then for the actual prices of the units, these numbers would also be changed around, correct?
Yes.
The in lieu
set-asides?
The in lieu prices
fees,
for the workforce
yes.
housing units.
Yeah, we would have to reevaluate that based on, again, those fees are set up based on the affordability gap, and it's looked at for the for sale product. We'd have to adjust that and look at current values and current affordability of the for sale and rental projects.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's what we're looking for. Good.
Yes. I will work.
Andrew, are we going to be using the HUD numbers for median income and such?
I believe that's our current ordinance reads HUD numbers.
How, if we had to recalculate, you would do it every year, I imagine, if we tried to recalculate. I don't know what the process is to determine our, I was to say, I have a feeling it's not easy data collection to do your city median income.
There are other partners out there that we have access to databases. Han has gotten some of that information that we could pull from. That there's other than just HUD dollars.
Right, but when you go...
I mean, Metro Study, for instance, they did their own calculation, which came up to 47,800.
So it's something we could do if we tried to use our numbers versus HUD numbers?
Correct, yeah, we could work with a service that would.
But you've got to keep that calculated each year. You've got to reevaluate it every year. Okay. I don't know how big of a deal that is, but yeah, from a data.
It is a custom to use the hard numbers for
Yes.
all affordable housing program because we have
Because of
an
finance.
independently determined number. While in the, I can go to American Community Survey. This is a sample. Those numbers have huge margin of errors, and I don't think it's usually recommended. I mean, we can recalculate those numbers for the city just to see, for all of you to see how that would work. But for the formal program, it's always had numbers.
Okay.
Yes.
All the cities always use this.
That's fine.
Just, now, was it the preserve, called preserve, was set up for workforce housing? And is that the one I'm thinking of?
That's the one that the CRA
The CRA,
subsidized, I
Michael?
believe.
And that all kind of went south on us?
Yes, it was incentivized as a workforce housing townhouse community, and that was the reason that they got the down payment assistance from us. It was in cooperation.
Excuse me. What was the name of the project?
It was the Preserve.
Preserve,
Mhm.
okay.
Cornerstone was the development community. It's up on Gateway and Federal. It imploded because of a multiple of factors. One, the housing market crash didn't help. The change from single-family home ownership to rental. They had the Chinese drywall outbreak, unfortunately, that also made it a terrible financial crisis inside the development. But once the CRA board allowed and supported the project going to rental, all of the homeowners that had purchased in there were now affected by a low-income housing rental project, and their values went from what they paid to half the value. It just was a disaster by converting that. So I think we've learned from that, not to, suggest supporting something along that line, but that really is what happened there. Otherwise, it was billed as an affordable housing development, and that's one of the reasons that you or the board incentivized it with TIF funding.
Okay, so we'll have safeguards in place. We put this back up on online here, workforce housing. We'll have checks and balances.
Sure. Yes. Because a lot of this money is borne by the developer. It's not going to be incentivized by CRA. That's not what this program is looking to do.
No, I just don't want the owner, the ownership, to have something happen to them,
This, I just have to jump in because this commission could establish those checks and balances, but a future commission could undo those.
Yeah.
So that has been the progression of these kinds of rules and regulations over time. They're fixed, not enforced, the economy alters them, the commission changes them. So there's very little you can do today to ensure against that change in the future by a future generation of commissioners. The reality.
Yeah.
you could get rid of certain limits.
Nice one.
Slide 28.
That's the hidden slide.
One more thing to add here is we do have a very large influx of apartment units right now. So what happens when the market changes over and maybe some of these units convert from apartment to condo? How does this workforce housing ordinance change that or affect or? Yeah.
So right now, we wouldn't capture any of those conversions in the ordinances the way it's currently written. There is a process where when you convert from a rental project to a condo, they have condo docs that come to the city for review, and they get reviewed by legal. There is a mechanism there that they have to get approval from the city. Currently, there's no regulations that would require them to, or we could put on to them the workforce housing or affordable housing program. I'm not sure that the legalities of that. I'd have to get with Jim to see whether or not that's something that we could enforce on them. But we could, I guess, investigate that, and when we bring it back, we could talk about it.
I would like some answers on that, because, I mean, right now we have, what, over 7,000 units that are
7,500.
apartments? So eventually, maybe some of these might decide to go condo, and there might be a way to also create some housing in there as well.
All right.
I'll
That might be
say-
one of those incremental steps that we do. Maybe we bring back here, and then there might be a little bit further rewrite, but we'll bring that back.
Baby
too.
steps, I understand. I understand.
I would say I'm in agreement with a lot of what was said here today. One, just on, on the spectrum of not having any regulation and having mandatory regulation, I think it only makes sense to compromise and go between and say we'll have regulations, but they're optional, and we'll give you a lot of incentive to do them. So I'm in favor of the voluntary. I wouldn't be in favor of mandatory. Anything that increases the potential returns to incentivize it, I'm in favor of, especially things that increase returns without decreasing our end. So incentives that take away from the amount of taxes they might have to pay, things like that, I wouldn't be in favor of that. But anything that spices their bottom dollar, to make sure that they do these additional units. Yeah, I think that, like you said, just looking at the existing ordinance, everything needs to be changed because it's just dated and not consistent with, market expectations. So, I look forward to seeing the rewrite, and I particularly like the opt-out options in lieu of options. That if, somebody says, look, I have a project and this is exactly how I want it, I can just give you some money or give you some land, and then we get to do whatever we want with it. So we can use it for CRA/city affordable housing. I like that there's an option that they could just pay out as opposed to being forced to alter their units, because that's a little more intrusive than I'd like. But the buying out of it, or the opt-out, or the in lieu of is a great alternative.
And what's the bottom line as far as price as a buyout, depending on the size of the project? And what percentage is that?
Each year.
It's based on what you're looking at as the affordability factor of the units. That's what it's not really a science. It's kind of a little bit of a looking at the data and creating it. So what I would suggest is you could look at what it would cost if you wanted to directly subsidize that person at whatever threshold it is, whether it's extremely low, moderate, and then you look at the gap between what they can afford and what it's costing them to stay in that unit. So then we could give you, it's similar to how you do the fire. I think the full fire assessment would be here. You can choose whether you want it to be at 100% or 50% or 30% to then look at it to see what makes sense to the market versus, what we're going to recoup to help promote workforce housing. So we could calculate that number, which is called the affordability gap, and then we would then use that number to look at determining what that in lieu payment would be.
And this rewrite's going to reflect the new numbers for this?
Yes, correct. We would come up, we would produce new numbers that are based on the current values and the current affordability.
So
we will have the rewrite when?
Well, right now,
Let's go your direction today.
we could have it back to you. We'd have it in front of the P&D board in July, August 15th for first reading, and September for the second reading, and I would strive to have this in front of you in June to get some feedback.
When can we see it? I want to see a
June
rough
20th.
draft before June.
In June, we get you a rough.
Right. So we'd have a second meeting in June, we'd have you a draft ordinance like we did with the medical cannabis, and we can get some feedback from there.
I'm going to hop on a soapbox for a second, if
Okay.
you all don't mind. Thank you for indulging me, Commission, and the rest of you staff, because this is something that's been very important to me, and it's very near and dear to my heart. And, I look at other cities that are around us and that are doing these changes, and we in Point Beach here are growing by leaps and bounds, and we're doing such great and amazing things. And one of the main things that I fear is that as we do all this great development is that we're going to leave people in the back end. And that's what I believe we as commissioners are all here to do, represent our community, represent the voice of our community. And if we're building a city that's not inclusive of everyone, then we've all failed. So this is why this was so important to me, make sure that A, we get it on the books ASAP, and B, that we actually create something that can allow for everyone to have a win-win situation where developers can still protect their bottom line, but at the same time, develop a product that will be attractive to everyone. So again, thank you all for minding my little, OCD about this, but this really was important to me, and I believe that we all are playing a very key and important role here in what the landscape and the future of Boynton Beach will be, and this is a time to actually take it seriously and make sure we do it correctly. Thank you.
And we did great tonight, and I thank you all very much, and we did it in our 3-hour time frame, just about that we expected. It was a good conversation we've needed to have on the workforce housing, and we have some great direction now, so I appreciate that. And Andrew and all your staff, that you worked very hard on this, and I think they did a great job making it understandable and manageable for us to be able to get the direction we did tonight. So thank you guys for a good job.
Earlier, I would recommend you do take the show on the road. I think
absolutely.
Oh yeah, once we have the draft, or we have, exactly. Yeah. Yep. All right. Good night. Thank you.